Chapter 862. The man's footsteps faded into the distance, accompanied by the sound of the door slamming. The living room quieted down. Fictional sat there. His body, which had been startled by the news, finally reacted at this moment. The hand that held her heart finally turned into a sharp knife and pierced into her heart. A sharp pain spread from the place where her heart was pierced, flowing along her blood to her limbs and bones. Her body fell to the ground, and her entire body was in pain. She trembled in pain. In the intense pain, Ling Jing's words were like echoes, ringing in her ears over and over again. I, the dignified young Master Ling, am being kept by you as a gigolo. You're really capable. Keeping me doesn't count. You can dump me whenever you want. Are you playing with me? Who do you think you are? Do you think you can play with me, young Master Ling? You're just a convict. You're not even fit to carry my shoes. Fictional, let me tell you, I've always been the one playing with people. No one can play with me. You called the start of this game, but the right to end it is in my hands. Now, I declare. Game over. She knew that she had an unbearable past. She knew that she had experienced the darkest time of her life. She used to think that she was prepared. Even if thousands of people criticized her, she would not retreat. However, when Ling Jing spat out the words, convict, she seemed to be unable to stop herself from bleeding. That man was the person she loved now. Yes. She fell in love with Ling Jing. She didn't know when it started, but Ling Jing became more and more important in her heart. She broke her principles again and again for him. She gave in again and again for him. She even thought about the future for him. She clearly knew that their identities were so incompatible. She clearly knew what would happen if she brought Ling Jing to Xiang Kaiping. But she still chose to do so. Abandoning a possible, the best option. She fell in love with an uncertain factor like Ling Jing. And now, she suffered a backlash. The great pain swept over her like a monstrous wave. For the first time, she lost her vitality. She was like a boat swaying in the wind, being ruthlessly beaten by the waves, and finally dismembered. She laid on the ground powerlessly, feeling the uncontrollable pain once again spreading from her body to her heart, feeling the pain of her bleeding heart. The strong will he had been putting up for so long had completely collapsed at this moment. The intense pain made her a little confused, and she touched her phone in a daze. She didn't know if it was subconscious or something else, but she pressed the number that she knew by heart. She didn't care if the call was connected or not. Unable to hold the phone in his hand, he dropped it on the ground. She raised her hand to cover the position of her heart and kept whispering. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts so much. It was really painful. I'm about to die from the pain. Why is it so painful? My whole body hurts, Really, it's so painful. It hurts too much. Mom, it hurts. Fictional was half asleep when she heard someone knocking on the door. Her entire body was in pain. Not only did it hurt, but her body also felt weak. She didn't want to pay attention to the knocking at the door at all. However, the person seemed to be very persistent and kept knocking on the door. She forced herself to get up from the ground and dragged her head, which was as heavy as a rock, to open the door. The moment the door opened, she couldn't hold on anymore and directly fell down again. Fictional. In a voice full of worry, she was hugged into a warm chest, and she heard a voice that she was already very familiar with. Fictional. Fictional, are you okay? Fictional. That familiar voice and care made her whole body relax. So tired. So sleepy. He would be fine after a good sleep. Sleep. Relaxing herself, she allowed the darkness to envelop her consciousness. Su Peijian was awakened by a very soft conversation. She was very familiar with that voice. Didn't you say that you would come to see her when you were free? Is that how you see her? How would I know? How would you know? You don't know anything. What kind of father are you? You don't know that your daughter is in a relationship, and you don't know that your daughter broke up. You don't even know that your daughter is sad because of her injury. I what? What? You've been acting for decades, and now you don't want to act anymore. Qianxue, what do you mean by that? What do you mean I've been acting for decades? Isn't it? Don't think that I'll forgive you for what you did in the past just because you treat Qing Sang well now. If you can't be consistent, why did you care so much about her in the past? I've been busy recently and didn't have time to take care of her. Busy? Don't make excuses for yourself. You just don't care about it. Okay, it's all my fault. Don't be angry. You flew all the way here and didn't sleep for the whole night. Aren't you tired? Rest for a while. I'll go buy you something to eat. What else to eat? I'm so angry that I'm full. If you're really that angry, just hit me twice. Hit you? I don't want my hands to be tired. The argument was very weak. Su Peijian listened to the two voices in a daze. When she heard it clearly, she woke up. When she opened her eyes, the two people who were arguing had stopped. A pair of very warm hands held her hand. Li Qianxue sat down by the bed and stared at her. Her eyes were a little worried. You're awake. Are you okay? The moment Su Peijian saw Li Qianxue, she was completely stunned. Just now, she thought she was dreaming, but everything in front of her told her that she wasn't dreaming. Her lips moved, but she couldn't say the word mother. Auntie, why are you here? The word auntie made Li Qianxue's expression change slightly. For a moment, she looked at Su Peijian, as if she was a little helpless. You've already called me on my cell phone. Why do you think I'm here? Su Peijian was stunned. The last memory was that she didn't know how to dial the number, and the continuous cries of pain. She seemed to have recalled something, and her heart started to ache sharply again. There was a glass of water beside her lips, and she was helped to sit up. Li Qianxue looked at her like this, and no matter how angry she was, she couldn't vent it. Drink some water. You have a fever, and your body is very weak now. Li Qianxue's voice didn't sound emotional. Su Peijian sat there and let her feed her until the last drop of water. When the warm water entered her throat, she couldn't help but look up at Li Qianxue. She was as noble and elegant as ever, but there was a little more gentleness in her eyes than before. It was probably because she was living well now. She looked down. Before she could react emotionally, Li Qianxue spoke first. Chapter 863. Su Peijian leaned on the hospital bed. When she met Li Qianxue's cold eyes, she suddenly didn't know what to say. What should she say? That she was abandoned by a man. That she accidentally provoked a man, but that man was just playing with her. That she fell in love with him, but that man just wanted to take revenge on her for being blind for a moment. Su Peijian couldn't say it. She sat there, shrouded in gloom. Li Qianxue winked at Su Qinghui behind her. Su Qinghui smiled at Su Peijian and then went out. After he left, Li Qianxue's face became serious. She turned to look at Su Peijian. Say it. Say what? Su Peijian didn't understand. Li Qianxue didn't let her play dumb and went straight to the point. Who is that man? Su Peijian's face didn't look good. She lowered her head and didn't know what to say. What? You don't want to admit it. To be able to make a woman like this, what else could it be other than a broken heart? Even if she wasn't the child. No matter what, she was the child she raised. Li Chinchua thought she knew Su Peijian very well. Su Peijian didn't lack money. She heard that she did a good job in the company. Seeing her half dead yesterday, Li Chinchua could only guess that she was broken up. She wanted to know which damned man made Su Peijian like this. No man. Su Peijian clenched her hands. She didn't look at Li Chinchua's eyes. There was a flash of determination in her eyes. No man. She just didn't feel well yesterday. She heard herself murmur. Li Chinchua looked at Su Peijian and seemed a little helpless. She reached out and held Su Peijian in her arms. Su Peijian's body became extremely stiff in an instant. The tip of her nose was the smell that she used to be very familiar with. She was patted on the back by a hand. Li Chinchua's voice sounded a little helpless. Peijian, I hope you remember. You are the daughter of the Su family, and you will always be. Holding Su Peijian, Li Chinchua felt a little sad. However, she restrained that emotion. Don't bear it alone. No matter when, whether it's me or your father, we will help you. Su Peijian felt a lump in her throat. She buried her head in Li Chinchua's arms, sniffed, and nodded hard. She didn't say anything, but Li Chinchua understood everything. Holding the child that she had raised with her own hands, she felt a little sad. The atmosphere in the ward was silent. Su Peijian felt a little embarrassed. He pushed Li Chinchua away slightly. Li Chinchua let go of her hand and looked at her with heartache. Rest well, you're still sick. What do you want to eat? I'll have someone bring it to you. How about shrimp congee? Su Peijian didn't say anything and just nodded again. Child, you're really... He did not finish his sentence. Li Chinchua got up and went to the door to inform Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui nodded and planned to go by himself. Only, she's emotionally unstable, you've... Li Chinchua's eyes swept over him, and a fierce look appeared on her face. What do you mean? Are you afraid that I still remember the past? Humph. Su Qinghui, if I want to remember something, I should remember what you did. What does it have to do with my daughter? How did I mean that? Su Qinghui felt wronged. I was afraid that you would think too much. Don't think that he didn't know that when Li Chinchua heard him call her auntie just now, she might have taken it to heart. All right, isn't it still a sin? Li Chinchua glared at Su Qinghui, her eyes filled with dissatisfaction. Su Qinghui was afraid that she would bring up the past. He quickly begged for mercy. Chapter 864. It was your fault in the first place. Is it my fault? Yes, yes, yes. My wife won't be wrong. Su Qinghui coaxed Li Chinchua. Li Chinchua didn't even look at him and went straight back to the ward. Su Peijian seemed to have calmed down. She leaned on the bed and didn't know what she was thinking. She didn't speak, and Li Chinchua wasn't in a hurry. She just poured her a glass of water. Thank you. Su Peijian took the water and was about to call her mom out of habit, but she held back. She didn't speak, and Li Chinchua didn't speak either. The mother and daughter, who used to be related, looked at each other in silence. Su Peijian finished the water and was about to put the glass down. Li Chinchua took the initiative to take it and put it aside. Her action made Su Peijian's nose sour again. When had Li Chinchua ever taken care of anyone before? But in the past, whenever she felt uncomfortable, the person who took care of her had always been Li Chinchua. Li Chinchua had never asked anyone else to take care of her. Her nose started to sting again. She didn't expect that she would call Li Chinchua subconsciously. However, the call had already been made, and the incident had already happened. It was obviously too late for her to take back the phone call. She had always imagined that the reunion would be after she had a good life and had completely let go. She hoped to see those people who existed in her memory again. Not like now, when she was caught off guard, and when she was at her most pathetic state. She bit her lip and felt very complicated. There was always a kind of child who ran away from home, wanting to make a name for herself in front of adults, but she didn't expect to be down and out. Li Qianxue looked at her and reached out to hold her hand. If you don't tell me who that man is, I won't ask. You're old enough to take care of yourself. If you feel uncomfortable staying in Rome City, go back to Lin City. Her voice paused here. Your room has always been kept at home. Nanny Zhang will clean it every day. I was serious when I said that. No matter when, you are the daughter of the Su family. This was already a kind of acknowledgement. No matter when, as long as Su Peijian wanted, she could go home at any time. Su Peijian's lips were tightly pressed into a straight line, and finally, she nodded hard. She didn't know what she could say. When Li Qianxue was so angry, she thought she would never forgive herself. Auntie, I. His throat was a little choked, and he only felt that it was very difficult. Li Qianxue held her hand tightly again. She patted the back of her hand gently. What a silly child. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian with heartache, sadness, and many other emotions that she couldn't put into words. She used to think that she would be angry for the rest of her life, but in fact, she was really not angry at Su Peijian. Back then, when he announced that he was severing ties with her, it was also because of a moment of anger. But in the end, he was still a child raised by himself. At that time, he had been so focused on Su Qinghui that he had neglected Su Peijian's feelings. It was her fault that her child had gone astray. Peijian. Sorry. This sudden apology took Su Peijian by surprise. Li Qianxue's lips curled into a smile, and there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. I was so mad at your father. It's my fault for not taking care of your feelings. Su Peijian didn't know how to respond to Li Qianxue's question. She just stared at her blankly. Li Qianxue reached out and tucked her hanging hair behind her ear. You are the child I raised. I should have trusted you. I didn't take good care of you. I didn't care about you. That's why you went astray. Su Peijian bit her lip and shook her head desperately. It wasn't like that. It really wasn't like that. Just like Su Qingsang said, she was just selfish and narrow-minded. She didn't want to share. If you don't want to call me Mom, I'll accept it. But don't scare me like this next time. Li Qianxue couldn't deny that the moment she received Su Peijian's call, she was shocked at first, but then her heart ached. She had raised her pampered daughter. Even though they had broken off their relationship, when had she ever suffered like this? When had she ever cried out in pain like this? Not to mention that Su Peijian was naturally very strong. When she was young, she never cried when she had a cold or a fever. She was proud and flamboyant, and she would not easily show her pain in front of others. When she received the call, she really didn't care about anything else. She booked the nearest plane ticket and flew over. She was also glad that she came. Otherwise, she didn't know what Su Peijian would have done. This child was very stubborn. She probably didn't want Xiang Kaiping to know. Su Peijian kept shaking her head. She wanted to say that she didn't call her mom because she wasn't sure if she still had the right to do so, but she couldn't say those words. Her throat felt uncomfortable as if it was blocked by something. She could only look at Li Qianxue with tears in her eyes. She wanted to call Li Qianxue, but Su Qinghui came back with the porridge he had specially bought. Have some porridge. You are still very weak. Have a good rest after eating it. Let's talk about it when you are better. Su Peijian couldn't say a word other than nodding. She looked at Li Qianxue's beautiful face and really wanted to call her mom, but she couldn't. Su Peixian still had a fever. After eating the porridge that Su Qinghui brought, she fell asleep again in a daze. When she was half asleep, she felt that someone was coming. When she opened her eyes, she found that it was Su Qingsang. She had also come to see her. Hua Jinyao stood outside the door with a cold face and didn't come in. Hua Jinyao still couldn't forget what Su Peixian had done to Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang could let it go, but he couldn't. However, since Su Qingsang wanted to see her, he could only let her go. It was impossible for him to let go, forgive, or even accept Su Peixian. Su Qinghui knew what Hua Jinyao was thinking and called him outside. No one knew what he said, but when he came back, Hua Jinyao's face looked slightly better. Hua Jinyao and his wife left. Li Qianxue returned to the bed and sat down. She reached out and held Su Peixian's hand. Qingsang is a good child. You should know a little about her personality. If anything happens next time, if I am not in Rong City, you can go to Qingsang and Hua Jinyao. Even if we are not here, he will help you. Su Peixian didn't say anything. Some things couldn't be done with help from others. How could others help her when it came to matters of the heart? She could only blame herself for being as blind as a bat. Thinking of Ling Jing, Su Peixian's heart ached again. Ling Jing, Ling Jing. These two words had become a knife. As long as it was mentioned, it would hurt. Li Qianxue couldn't bear to see her like this. She wanted to say a lot, but in the end, she could only sigh. The mother and daughter couldn't go back to the past. Ling Jing sat behind his desk. In front of him was a pile of documents waiting for him to solve, but he only felt annoyed. He didn't want to deal with these business matters at all. He didn't want to sit here at all. He resisted the urge to sweep all the things on the table to the ground. He got up and walked to the window. Chapter 865. He had the urge to destroy everything in his heart. It was at this time that the ancient cultivator ran into his muzzle. Young master. Gu Xiu's expression was solemn as he approached Ling Jing. Shen Lefu went out. Ling Jing narrowed his eyes. Went out. That was interesting. Where did she go? Our people have been watching her. She seems to be going to third young master's villa. Ling Jing smiled with a bloodthirsty murderous intent in his eyes. If that's the case, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Gu Xiu looked at Ling Jing's expression and felt a chill on the back of his neck. Shen Lefu looked at the man in front of her. Her brother asked her to find this person. He said that as long as she found him, he would find a way to save her brother. She had tried before. Originally, he wanted Ling Jing to let him go, but Ling Jing was too difficult to control. She was temperamental and unpredictable. She had tried several times, but Ling Jing never let her go. She had no choice. No matter what, she had to save her brother. Third young master of the Ling family, Ling Yu. He was the one who asked his brother to kill Ling Jing. Since that was the case, he had to be responsible for his brother and save him. Ever since Ling Yu instructed Shen Jing to kill Ling Jing, he had been very nervous, afraid that Shen Jing would give him up. But he really couldn't wait. He was afraid that Ling Jing would find out and tell the old man. Fortunately, it had been a few months and Ling Jing hadn't done anything. He had already been relieved. He didn't expect Shen Lefu to come to him. The moment he saw Shen Lefu, he didn't feel pity for her. He only felt annoyed. It was not easy for this matter to pass like this. Ling Jing, that kid, had not made any movements recently. What if Ling Jing found out that Shen Lefu came here? What are you doing here? Third young master, please save my brother. Please save my brother. Shen Lefu cried as soon as she saw Ling Yu. My brother was caught by young Master Ling because he did things for you. You must save my brother. Ling Yu was annoyed to see this person. Are you crazy? Why are you begging me? I haven't blamed your brother for his incompetence, and you still have the nerve to come to me. But my brother was caught by Ling Jing to do things for you. You must save him. Let me tell you, your brother isn't dead yet. If I went to save him, wouldn't I be giving Ling Jing something to use against me? Do you think I'm stupid? Ling Yu would never save Shen Jing. If your brother is dead, then so be it. What does it have to do with me? Third young master, you can't do this. Third young master. Shen Lefu still wanted to say something, but Ling Yu had lost his patience. Don't come here and be an eyesore. Third young master, my brother got into trouble because he was doing things for you. I don't care, you must save him. Shen Lefu went forward to hug Ling Yu's thigh. Ling Yu lifted his leg to kick her to the side, but Shen Lefu hugged him so tightly that he couldn't kick her away. Ling Yu was furious. He looked at his subordinates and said, "Are you dead? Don't you know how to pull this person away? Third brother doesn't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Even I want to avenge him." Ling Jing's sudden voice made Ling Yu freeze. He looked at Ling Jing, as if he didn't understand why he suddenly appeared. Behind Ling Jing, in addition to Gu Xiu, were nearly 10 subordinates, all dressed in black suits and ties. Ling Jing was the only one. He wore a white suit but a dark purple tie. He looked like a little prince who walked out of a painting, but there was a hint of evil in him. When he raised his beautiful phoenix eyes, they looked like they were smiling, but they were full of malice. You, why are you here? Ling Yu suddenly felt uncomfortable when he saw him. Isn't third brother in the middle of a drama? Since it's a drama, I, as his younger brother, naturally have to come and watch. As Ling Jing spoke, he walked to the sofa. The subordinate behind her pretended to brush the sofa a few times, and then Ling Jing sat down. He looked up and saw Shen Lefu trembling beside him. He curled his lips, and the evil in his eyes deepened. Continue. Why did you stop? The scene in the living room was very strange. Shen Lefu, who had been hugging Ling Yu's thigh, didn't dare to do so anymore. She withdrew her hands and shrunk there, looking even more pitiful. Ling Jing rubbed his temples and looked at Gu Xiu behind him. He received a signal from his eyes and waved his hand. Immediately, 2 subordinates pulled Shen Lefu away. Shen Lefu's body had completely lost its strength and was limp. If it weren't for the people holding her, she would have already slipped to the ground. Third brother. Ling Jing looked at Ling Yu and clicked his tongue. Look at how soft-hearted you are. This woman came to pester you, so just pull her out. Why are you wasting so much time talking? Ling Yu didn't know what Ling Jing was doing, so he didn't dare to move at all. Ling Jing moved her fingers, and the subordinate standing next to Shen Lefu punched Shen Lefu's abdomen. She screamed and curled up. Another subordinate punched her again, and blood flowed from the corner of Shen Lefu's mouth. Ling Jing looked at Ling Yu. Third brother, did you see that? Ling Yu swallowed his saliva. He was really scared by Ling Jing. Ling Jing, you, what did I do? What are you doing, third brother? I didn't ask someone to assassinate you, right? I didn't ask someone to bribe your subordinates to stab you in the back, right? So, why are you so scared? Shen Lefu had already fallen to the ground. The 2 subordinates let go and looked at Ling Yu together. Ling Yu's legs were a little weak. Ling Jing, what do you want? What do I want? That's a good question. Ling Jing didn't know what he wanted to do. He was just angry, and wanted to kill someone. He had nowhere to vent the anger in his heart. His fingers moved again, and the two subordinates stood in front of Ling Yu. "Ling Jing, don't you dare. I'm your brother," Ling Yu shouted. Ling Yu screamed. Two of his subordinates had already picked up his body from both sides. He hurriedly looked behind him. "Are you guys dead? Hurry up and pull me away." When the subordinates behind Ling Yu were about to get up, the remaining 8 people that Ling Jing brought with him stood forward and formed a human wall. Ling Jing stood up and looked at Ling Yu. He walked toward him step by step. "Third brother, you know I have a bad temper." "Ling Jing, are you crazy? What do you want?" Ling Jing clenched his fists and punched Ling Yu's abdomen. The punch was fast, heavy, and ruthless. Ling Yu's body curled up. Ling Jing reached out and picked up the front of his shirt. "I'll do it myself. I'm giving you face, right?" Another punch, and a few more punches. Ling Yu had already fallen. He fell, but Ling Jing didn't plan to stop attacking. He raised his foot and pressed it against Ling Yu's chest, the tip of his shoe stuck in his neck. Ling Yu had difficulty breathing. He looked at Ling Jing, panting heavily. You dare what?" Ling Jing smiled carelessly. "You want to ask me if I dare to kill you? Do you want to try? If I really kill you, what will happen to the old man?" "Ling Jing," Ling Yu shouted, but soon he couldn't say anything. His face was red, and he just stared at Ling Jing. Ling Jing pushed his shoe forward, and Ling Yu's face had already turned purple. He pulled Ling Jing's foot away, but Ling Jing stuck it tightly. He let go of his foot when his hand was about to touch him. He took a step to the side and looked down at Ling Yu's changed color and twisted facial features. "Third brother, you know I have a bad temper. I'm not afraid of killing you. If I really kill you, the old man will have to clean up the mess for me. Do you believe me?" Ling Yu coughed non-stop, and tears started to fall from the corners of his eyes. He just looked at Ling Jing with resentment in his eyes, but he didn't say a word. Ling Jing felt bored. It was really too boring. He rubbed his shoe against Ling Yu's body, turned around, and took a step back. He moved his fingers and planned to leave. Shen Lefyu, who had been lying on the ground, seemed to have found an opportunity. She used all her strength to hug Ling Jing's leg. Young Master Ling, I beg you, let my brother go. It's all third young master's orders. It has nothing to do with my brother. I'm begging you." She had been punched twice, and her face was pale. She looked very weak. Ling Jing was about to leave, but when he looked at Shen Lefyu's eyes, he suddenly thought of Su Peijian. That day, she also fell to the ground like this. If he had left a little later, would he have seen her crying and begging him like this? Ling Jing didn't know. He closed his eyes, and when he lowered his head again, there was no fluctuation in his eyes. He shook off Shen Lefyu's hand and walked out, but when he passed by Gu Xiu, he said 2 words. "Take her away." Su Peijian stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui stayed with her. 2 days later, she recovered. She left the hospital and returned to Rome Garden. Li Qianxue didn't agree at first. She was afraid that she couldn't take care of herself, so she wanted her to go to the Hua family. However, Su Peijian refused. When she recovered, she wanted to go to the company. Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui couldn't stay in Rome City all the time. They had their own things to do in Lin City. After hiring a housekeeper to take care of Su Peijian and telling her to pay attention to her 3 meals and take good care of herself, Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue left. Su Peijian didn't see Li Qianxue off. Knowing that she was going back to Lin City, she had a lot to say to her, but in the end, she just didn't say anything. She watched Li Qinchue and Su Qinghui get into the car that Hu Jinyao had arranged. When Li Qinchue was about to get into the car, she ran back and hugged Su Peijian. "All right, I'm leaving. If there's anything, tell your father and me. You can also find Qing Sang. Hu Jinyao also promised to take good care of you. Don't bear it alone. If he could handle it, he would. If he couldn't, he would go home. Got it?" "Yes." Su Peijian's nose was sore. She nodded heavily, hugged Li Qinchue, and quickly let go. Li Qinchue let go of her, turned around, and got into the car to leave. Chapter 866. The weather was good. Su Peijian looked up at the blue sky. This time, she didn't feel abandoned. She knew that she wasn't alone. Other than Xiang Kaiping, she had Su Qinghui and Li Qinchue. What happened yesterday was like yesterday's death, and what happened today was like today's life. From now on, Su Peijian, be strong and pull yourself together. You'll be the old Su Peijian again. Taking a deep breath, Su Peijian got into her car and drove to the company. When she passed by the bakery, she glanced at it subconsciously. The shop was still there, but everything had become a joke. It was really ridiculous. Su Peijian looked away and never looked in that direction again. Everything was over. Su Peijian's life returned to normal. Every day, she went to work, got off work, and went home. She didn't see Ling Jing again. Half a month later, Ling Kaiping came back. She had a lot of fun this time and brought a lot of gifts for Su Peijian. She almost filled Su Peijian's bed. Peijian. Xiang Kaiping went out to have fun. She was always with people around her age. Since they were all together, the most they talked about was their children. He had gone out to see a different world and come into contact with different people. Xiang Kaiping finally figured some things out. After showing Su Peijian the gifts, she took her hand to sit on the bed and patted the back of her hand. "Mom has thought it through. If you don't like Feishing, so be it. You can be with whoever you like. If you don't want to get married, then don't. As long as you're happy. I used to worry that no one would take care of you. But now I realize that you can actually take good care of yourself. Since that's the case, I have nothing to worry about." Xiang Kaiping said this and sighed. "No matter what, as long as you're happy." Su Peijian looked at Xiang Caiping's hand. She knew that Xiang Kaiping loved her too. She lowered her head and blinked. When she looked up at Xiang Kaiping again, there was a bright smile in her eyes. "Mom. Thank you, but don't worry. It's not that I don't want to get married, but I don't think I've met anyone I like yet. As long as I do, I'll get married." "Okay. Mom believes you. My daughter naturally has good taste. It's just that those stinking brats aren't worthy of her." Su Peijian smiled and looked into Xiang Caiping's eyes. For the first time, she took the initiative to lean on her shoulder. She looked at an unknown point and murmured, "Mom, don't worry. I'll be happy." Not long after Xiang Kaiping came back, the duplex that Su Peijian had bought had already been renovated. Su Peijian planned to air the house to get rid of the smell before moving in. She had ordered the furniture online, and when it was delivered, she happened to be free, so she went there herself. Su Peijian walked out of the new house and was about to return to the company when she realized that it was already evening. Instead of returning to the company, he chose to return to the villa. Because Xiang Kaiping had talked things out with her the last time she came back, their relationship had improved quite a bit. She would be able to get along with Xiang Kaiping better. Occasionally, she would receive a call from Su Qinghui and Li Qinchue, who were concerned about her. She would only say that she was fine. Other than telling them that she was safe, she did not say anything else. Time went by unhurriedly for a month. Su-Peijian only realized that summer had arrived when everyone on the street had changed into short-sleeved shirts. She had bought all the furniture, and everything in the new house was ready. Xiang Kaiping had taken the initiative to do this. Su-Peijian was restless now, so it was good to find her something to do. When she got up in the morning, she changed into her sportswear and ran outside. Halfway through, she met the golden retriever again. The golden retriever was very excited to see her. When it wanted to pounce on her again, someone pulled its leash. When she saw Lin Feixing again, Su-Peijian did not feel embarrassed at all. She nodded and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, Lin Feixing stopped her. Peijian. Yes. What? You can't even be a friend now that you can't be a lover. Lin Feixing joked. Su-Peijian felt a little helpless. I didn't mean that. That's good. Lin Feixing smiled. Recently, our company has a case that I think you should be interested in. What do you think? Do you want to pick a time to talk? Sure. Su-Peijian wouldn't turn down such an opportunity. When is it convenient for you? She asked. How about tomorrow? Okay. After making an appointment with Lin Feixing, Su-Peijian continued to run back, leaving Lin Feixing standing behind her and looking at her back for a long time. Finally, he lowered his head and rubbed the head of the golden retriever under his feet. Dian Dian, have you noticed that she's a little different? As for what was different, Lin Feixing could not tell. Su-Peijian did not know the changes in the eyes of others. To her, life was the same as when she had just been released from prison. After making an appointment with Lin Feixing, the two of them agreed to meet at a club that night. Su-Peijian could roughly guess Lin Feixing's hidden thoughts, so she did not refuse. The two of them arrived at the club. After entering the private room, they were not in a hurry to talk about the cooperation. They talked for a while about the recent situation and the progress of the previous case. Lin Feixing was a very chatty person. There was no need to worry about not having a topic to talk with him. The two of them talked for a while, and Lin Feixing's phone rang. He politely stood up and said that he had to go outside to make a call. Su-Peijian gestured for him to do as he pleased and let him go. While she was waiting, she took out her phone, replied to a few emails, and made 2 more calls. Finally, when she finished scrolling through her WeChat moments, she realized that Lin Feixing had not returned yet. Puzzled, she stood up and went outside to look for him. After searching for a while, Su-Peijian finally stood outside the men's bathroom and took out her phone to call Lin Feixing. The person who answered the phone was not Lin Feixing. It was an unfamiliar voice. The gentleman you're looking for is on the top floor. Miss, you can come up directly to him. Top floor. Su-Peijian did not know what Lin Feixing was doing up there. She returned to the private room. Not quite sure what had happened to him, she picked up her bag and went up to the top floor. The dining area was on the 2nd and 3rd floors, and the entertainment facilities were on the 4th to 7th floors. The 8th floor and above were guest rooms, and the top floor seemed to be a presidential suite. What was Lin Feixing doing here? Su-Peijian was a little uncertain. She believed that Lin Feixing was not a casual person, but she went upstairs and got out of the elevator. There was only one door. Su-Peijian looked at the door, walked up, and pressed the doorbell. The door opened quickly, and a man she did not know stood inside. Gu Xiao looked at the man in front of him. The man took a step back and said, "Miss Su, please." Su-Peijian looked at him uncertainly, and then walked in. There was a row of men in black standing on both sides of the door, and they looked like bodyguards. Passing through the row of people, Su-Peijian saw Ling Jing sitting in the middle of the raised living room. Beside him were two young women, one on his left and the other on his right. One was pouring wine into his glass, and the other was feeding a piece of fruit into Ling Jing's mouth. The moment she saw Ling Jing, Su Peijian felt as if her heart was being squeezed again. The hand was very strong, and her heart began to ache. She clenched her teeth and suppressed the pain. Ling Jing was wearing a black shirt, and the top two buttons had been unbuttoned by him. His muscular chest was exposed. He leaned against the back of the sofa, relaxed and leisurely. Eating the fruit that the woman next to him fed into his mouth, the corners of his eyes raised with a somewhat evil smile. This was Ling Jing, the young master of the Ling family. This was his real face. Su Peijian suddenly had this realization. Taking a deep breath, she turned around and wanted to leave. The two black-robed men at the side blocked her way at this time. She looked at the two people in front of her and had to turn around to face Ling Jing. What? Aren't you curious about where that pretty boy is now? The sudden question made Su Peijian suddenly understand. Why wasn't Lin Feixing the person who answered the phone? What did you do to him? Looking at the situation today, it was not difficult to guess who was behind Lin Feixing not returning to the private room. Why don't you guess? Ling Jing's nonchalant tone was really infuriating. The woman next to him handed him a glass of red wine, and he directly drank it from her hand. The way he looked at her was full of provocation. Su Peijian stood there motionlessly, her hands hanging by her side tightly clenched into fists. What on earth do you want? What do I want? That is really a good question. Ling Jing frowned as if he had thought of something. Woman, I remember I said that one day, I will make you beg me. Beg me, and I will let him go. How about that? Crazy. Su Peijian didn't even have the intention to stop. She turned around and continued to walk. At this moment, the big screen next to her lit up. She turned around and glanced at the screen. On the screen, Lin Feixing was tied up. The corner of his mouth was bleeding, and there were a few bruises on his face. It was obvious that he had been beaten. Su Peijian couldn't move. Ling Jing had dealt with Lin Feixing because of her. She couldn't just leave like this. She gritted her teeth, took a deep breath, and let the pain in her heart spread again. She forced herself to look extremely calm and turned to face Ling Jing. Ling Jing, if you have any anger, take it out on me. He is just an irrelevant person. It's an irrelevant person. Ling Jing raised his eyebrows because of her words. But just now, he bumped into me and hurt my shoulder. I just called him over to teach him a lesson. Can't I? Yes, of course. Su Peijian could see Ling Jing's power and that this was Ling Jing's territory. Su Peijian nodded. Then, may I ask if young Master Ling is done teaching him a lesson? Can you let him go now? No, Ling Jing said rather shamelessly. I have to let him know how powerful I am, right? Know how powerful Ling Jing was. She knew all too well. How could a person like Lin Feixing survive in Ling Jing's hands? Su Peijian couldn't even adjust her breathing. She couldn't help but take a step forward, her bright face full of sharpness. Chapter 867. The atmosphere in the private room was a bit depressing. The two rows of bodyguards behind her and the scene of Lin Feixing being beaten on the big screen made Su Peijian feel that the Ling Jing in front of her was no longer the hooligan she had picked up. It was the same person, but it gave people a completely different feeling. This wasn't the Ling Jing she knew. This was a stranger. She stood there and looked at Ling Jing coldly, waiting for him to say something to humiliate or embarrass her. That was Ling Jing's goal. What did it matter if he only said a few words to her? Didn't I say it just now? Beg me. Ling Jing spread his hands and said indifferently, if you beg me, I'll let him go. Su-Peision clenched her fists. I beg you. Wasn't that what he wanted? She gave it to him. She looked at him coldly. Even when she said the word beg, there was a hint of arrogance in her eyes. Ling Jing suddenly smiled. That smile was very sarcastic. Is this your attitude when you beg people? Okay. Su-Peision clenched her fists and nodded heavily. Then I wonder, how does young Master Ling want me to beg you? Ling Jing looked at her. He watched her beg him for another man. He watched her stand in front of him with a cold face, as if she was not affected at all. The malice in his eyes deepened. He looked up at Su-Peision and glanced at the coffee table in front of him. Simple. See this bottle of wine on the table? You drank it all. Let's forget about what happened today. Su-Peision glanced at the coffee table. Ling Jing was talking about vodka. Drink the whole bottle of vodka. He was really imaginative. If I finish this wine, let's forget about what happened today, right? She took a step forward and looked at Ling Jing coldly, making the final confirmation. Yes. Ling Jing seemed to be annotating her own words, as long as you drink this bottle of wine. As long as you drink this bottle of wine, I'll let bygones be bygones. How about that? Okay. Su-Peision didn't even frown. She nodded to show that she understood. She went forward and picked up the bottle. She didn't even need a glass. She directly put the bottle to her mouth and began to drink. When the strong liquor entered the throat, it actually made people feel uncomfortable. Su-Peision took a few sips and almost choked. She gritted her teeth and endured it. Soon, not only did her throat feel uncomfortable, but her stomach also began to feel uncomfortable. Half of the wine in the bottle was gone, but she continued. Ling Jing sat there and looked at them coldly. Her hands on her knees were clenched into fists. The woman beside him fed him wine. He opened his lips mechanically and drank it. He felt that the wine was a little bitter. 2/3 of the vodka was gone, but Su-Peision was still drinking. Some of the wine flowed out of the corner of her mouth. It slid down her beautiful neck and into her clothes. She was wearing a white silk shirt today, and the light texture was easily wet by the wine. The dampness on his white clothes became more and more obvious. Ling Jing's face couldn't be more gloomy. He watched as Su-Peision finished the last of her wine. Finally, he put the bottle down. The bottle clinked on the table. Young Master Ling, is this okay? Su-Peision, who had drunk a bottle of white wine in one breath, looked very ugly. Not only was her face swollen, but her eyes were also a little bloodshot. She stared straight at Ling Jing's face, her eyes firm and a little gloomy. Ling Jing didn't say anything. He just stared at Su-Peision. She also stubbornly looked back at him. There seemed to be countless sparks in the air. Ling Jing suddenly flared up at this moment. All of you, get out. Su-Peision stood still. The others didn't understand what was going on. Only the ancient cultivator standing on the side understood. With a glance, the two women on the side stood up reluctantly and then went outside. The bodyguards on both sides stepped back and left together. Only Su-Peision stood there without moving. She stared at Ling Jing. When she heard the sound of the door closing behind her, she asked again very calmly, Young Master Ling, is it okay now? Can you let her go now? The alcohol began to erode Su-Peision's will. She wasn't bad at drinking, but she had never drunk a bottle of vodka in one breath like this. She even felt a little weak in her legs. It was her strong willpower that she could stand here with her body straight. Ling Jing stood up, walked around the coffee table, and walked step by step to Su-Peision. Finally, he stood in front of her. He stared at Su-Peision's face. His almond-shaped eyes, which had always been evil, were now a little sinister. Yes. Of course you can. I, young Master Ling, always do what I say. If you want me to let her go, I will let her go. Su Peijian didn't have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Ling Jing's next words made her stand there motionless. I just said, forget about that gigolo. I didn't say that forget about what happened before. What happened before? Su Peijian was a little dizzy from the alcohol. What do you mean, young Master Ling? It's between you and me, of course. Ling Jing reached out and lifted Su Peijian's chin. He stared straight at her face. Think about it. I am the dignified young master of the Ling family, but you treat me as a gigolo. I've been with you for so long. What? Do you really think I can let it go? Su Peijian took a deep breath. She stared at Ling Jing. What do you want, young Master Ling? What do I want? You did something wrong. Of course, you have to be taught a lesson, right? Su Peijian stood still and looked at Ling Jing coldly. Suddenly, she smiled. Yes. You are the dignified young master of the Ling family. I, Su Peijian, wronged you to be my gigolo. Speaking of which, it is indeed my fault. I just don't know how young Master Ling plans to teach me a lesson. There was a piercing pain in her heart again. But it was only for a moment. At this time, Su Peijian was very calm. She was so calm that even the alcohol didn't have any effect on her. Ling Jing pinched her chin and looked at her delicate face. Finally, he opened his thin lips and said, "It's simple. You will stay with me for as long as I have been with you. But this time, we will do the opposite. You will be the one being kept by me. How about that?" Su Peijian's expression changed. She felt her face turn pale at Ling Jing's direct and violent humiliation. She kept adjusting her breathing and tried her best to suppress the pounding of her heart. Finally, she put away the smile on her face and looked at Ling Jing mockingly. Young Master Ling wants to keep me. You can't. Yes, of course you can. Su Peijian smiled faintly. Her expression was extremely mocking. Didn't young Master Ling say that I am a prisoner under labor reform? Doesn't young Master Ling think that it is beneath your status to keep a prisoner under labor reform like me? The air conditioning in the private room was very low, but it couldn't be lower than the temperature in Su Peijian's heart. She was very angry. So angry that if there was a knife in front of her, she would stab it into Ling Jing's body without hesitation. But strangely, perhaps because of the alcohol, she actually restrained herself. She was only using this extremely self-deprecating method to make the wound that was already very deep deeper, a little deeper. Ling Jing seemed to not feel her gaze at all. He moved his face closer to her. The distance between the two of them was less than 10 centimeters. He was close to her face. There was a faint smell of alcohol in the air. She didn't know whether it was from her or him. It is indeed beneath my status, but what should I do? I haven't had enough fun with you, a prisoner under labor reform. Think about it, I've played with so many women, but only one like you is lacking. At first, you were the daughter of a rich family, and then you became a prisoner under labor reform. TSK, thinking about it, it's really quite exciting. So I want to continue playing. Can't I? The insulting tone, the flirtatious expression, and the evil look in his eyes were blatantly provocative. Su Peijian swatted his hand away and took a big step back. Ling Jing, don't go too far. I like going too far, can't I? He moved closer to Su Peijian again and pinched her chin. Then do you want it or not? Su Peijian gritted her teeth. Her little face, which was flushed because of the alcohol, was now frighteningly pale. She had never drunk like this before. It made her whole body feel uncomfortable. But she couldn't leave. She could think calmly, but the alcohol made her consciousness somewhat unable to keep up, and her reaction was just a beat slower. Ling Jing. She forcefully swatted his hand away. She raised her face and looked at Ling Jing stubbornly. I refuse. Refuse? Ling Jing suddenly laughed. Do you think you can refuse? He raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the big screen. Do you believe that even if I kill him today, nothing will happen to me tomorrow? Believe. Of course she believed. Su Peijian had long seen that Ling Jing had this ability. Su Peijian clenched her fists, and that hand began to pinch her heart again. She stood there motionless, letting her heart be squeezed out of shape by that hand, broken, and never put back together again. In front of her, Ling Jing's face was magnified in front of her. He seemed to have become a monster that could devour her. She didn't know if it was the effect of alcohol or something else, but she only felt that her consciousness was getting more and more dizzy. She took a step back, but her feet went soft, and her body couldn't stand. What? You don't believe me? Ling Jing stepped forward and pulled her body up. Do you want to try? Su Peijian was pulled by him, and her body crashed into his arms. The discomfort that she had been suppressing finally couldn't be restrained anymore. She tilted her head, tilted her body, and directly vomited on Ling Jing's body. The pungent and unpleasant smell was mixed with the very choking smell of alcohol. Ling Jing's face turned green. Su Peijian was really uncomfortable. Drinking strong alcohol was bad for the body, and drinking fast was even more so. Not only did she vomit once, but she also continued to vomit a second time. Her footsteps were unsteady. She didn't want to fall, so she reached out and grabbed Ling Jing's arm and vomited again. Ling Jing's clothes were already out of shape. The smell was unpleasant, and the vomit was dirty. His face changed. He was sure that this woman did it on purpose. Chapter 868. Damned woman, she was really courting death. He reached out to pull Su Peijian away, but her legs gave way and she fell backward. There was a flash of panic in Ling Jing's eyes. Before he returned to his senses, his body reacted quickly and supported her. Su Peijian, who was touched by him, had a face full of resistance. She waved her hand and wanted to push Ling Jing away. Let me go. It was just that she was too weak, and Ling Jing was too strong. Before she lost consciousness, all she could feel was Ling Jing's embrace. His chest was still warm, but it could no longer warm her heart. What it brought her was only a stretch of coldness. When Su Peijian woke up, she only felt a splitting headache. It took her a long time to really wake up. He opened his eyes and placed his hand on his forehead. The headache was getting more and more obvious. Looking at the environment in front of her, for a moment, she thought that she had returned to her home in Lin City. The room was very big, and the bed under her was very soft. It was all handmade Italian furniture. She frowned and didn't know where she was for a moment. Some fragments came to her mind intermittently, and she suddenly remembered what happened before she fainted. Ling Jing, she never thought that one day when he recovered his identity, he would be so ruthless and resolute. Looking around, she could roughly guess where she was at the moment. Thinking that she was in Ling Jing's place, she couldn't stay any longer. She got up and realized that her clothes were gone, leaving only her underwear. This surprised her again, but it was only for a moment. She was still clear that her body didn't feel like that. Ignoring her current appearance, she got out of bed. She walked to the wardrobe and stood still. She found that the wardrobe was full of men's clothes. Every one of them was handmade and of excellent workmanship. Looking at the clothes on the wardrobe, Su Peijian smiled. Yes, she should have discovered it when they first met. Ling Jing's clothes were all extraordinary. Although he was covered in blood, it couldn't hide his temperament. Su Peijian closed her eyes and mocked in her heart that she was indeed blind. If she wasn't blind, she would have seen it long ago. Although Ling Jing was sloppy and looked very improper most of the time. But how could his every movement be that of a hooligan? He was blind, so who could he blame for the backlash? Shaking her head to get rid of those useless thoughts, she picked out a shirt and put it on. Ling Jing's pants were too big for her. After some thought, she watched him take out a knitted polo shirt from his closet. He put it on his waist from the bottom and tied it in a knot with his sleeve. It turned into a somewhat different kind of dress. Looking at himself in the mirror, he felt that it would be fine to go out like this. He turned around and left the room. There was no one in the corridor. Su Peijian stood there and looked at the long corridor on both sides. Finally, she walked in the direction of the stairs. It was such a big villa, but there seemed to be no one there. Su Peijian stepped on the thick carpet. When she reached the stairs, she happened to see Ling Jing walking upstairs. He stood in the middle of the spiral staircase and narrowed his eyes at the sight of her clothes. The white shirt was obviously a little too big for her, and she just had to use a black dress as a skirt. This outfit was extremely unconventional, but because the person wearing it was her, it made her look a little more casual. This woman, no matter when, had the capital to seduce men. Up the stairs, Ling Jing's eyes were locked on Su Peijian, and he didn't look away for a moment. Su Peijian stood straight. Even though she was wearing Ling Jing's clothes, it still couldn't hide her imposing manner. Their eyes met in the air. Su Peijian's expression didn't change, but Ling Jing narrowed his eyes. He had seen Su Peijian in disheveled clothes. He had never seen Su Peijian in men's clothes. The higher he went, the more he could see her body under the shirt. Just the thought of his shirt on her body was enough to drive him crazy. He finally reached the top of the stairs and stood opposite Su Peijian. His eyes were locked on Su Peijian's face. The distance between the two of them was less than 10 centimeters. Su Peijian glanced at him. After he came up, she turned around and walked downstairs. Before she could take a step, her arm was grabbed by someone. She turned around and looked at Ling Jing's face coldly. He pulled her into his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her lips hard. She struggled, but her hands were restrained by Ling Jing. She was wearing his shirt, which made him want to tear her shirt. The imaginary scene lingered in his mind, and his kiss became more and more domineering. Su Peijian couldn't break free. Her lips were ravaged by him. She opened her mouth and bit him when he thought she wanted to kiss him. Ling Jing's lips hurt, but it stimulated the blood in his body. He carried her in his arms and went in the direction of the room. Su Peijian struggled again. She wanted to leave him, but he held her tightly. There was a natural gap between the strength of a man and a woman. She was no match for him. Her body was thrown on the bed somewhat rudely. After bouncing twice, she was suppressed again before she could get up. The moment he approached, Su Peijian turned her face away. Ling Jing, this is rape. I can sue you. Sue me. Ling Jing sneered. Okay, do you want to try? As he spoke, he put his hand on the back of her waist. I've never seen a rapist who can make the victim orgasm. Shameless. Su Peijian gritted her teeth. Ling Jing's hand turned to her chest, and with a force, the high-quality shirt she was wearing was torn. Her clothes were half exposed, and Su Peijian struggled even more. Ling Jing, you bastard. But who was Ling Jing? She didn't want to admit defeat, and she couldn't admit defeat. Su Peijian gritted her teeth and forced herself to ignore her body's reaction. The more she did so, the more Ling Jing didn't want her to get what she wanted. The two of them had been together for half a year, and their bodies were very familiar. Even if they were separated, the memory of their bodies was still there. He clearly knew every sensitive spot on her body. He clearly knew her every reaction when he moved. It was as if they had returned to the beginning. He wanted to conquer, and she only wanted to counterattack. Every touch, every kiss, was on the point. Every time she resisted, every time she tried to escape, it could only be exchanged for more crazy attacks from him. Her polo shirt was soon torn, her shoes fell to the ground, and her body was firmly nailed under him. Woman. Ling Jing bit her lips and said in a slightly hoarse voice, I will let you know that this is not called rape, but rape. The morning sun shone into the room. It was a new day. And his plunder had just begun. Chapter 869. When Ling Jing left Su Peijian's body, he felt that the gloom of this period of time had dissipated. He sat up quite refreshed. When he was about to leave, Su Peijian, who had been lying motionless on the bed, suddenly sat up. With a slap, he was slapped in the face. Su Peijian, with another slap, the other side of his face was also slapped. Ling Jing's face turned green, and he instinctively raised his hand. Su Peijian raised her head and looked at him fearlessly. Ling Jing put down his hand hatefully and pinched her chin. Are you looking for death? Yes, I'm looking for death. Do you want to kill me? Su Peijian's breathing was a little unstable. She really wanted to know if Ling Jing would really kill her just because she was blind for a moment. Do you think I don't dare? You dare, of course you dare. What else is there that you don't dare to do? Su Peijian was furious. The shameless Ling Jing was simply hateful. Taking advantage of the innate gap between men and women, not only did he do whatever he wanted to her, but also, thinking of the entanglement between the two of them before, her face turned red. Not because she was shy, but because she was angry. She pushed Ling Jing away and got out of bed just like that. But this time, even her underwear was destroyed by him. There were no clothes in the room. She gritted her teeth, and her heart was almost bleeding. Walking to the wardrobe, she planned to pick 2 new clothes and leave at will. However, Ling Jing walked behind her and turned her body around. Want to leave? Do you think I'll allow it? Ling Jing, have you had enough fun? Su Peijian's eyes darkened, and there was obvious anger in them. I have nothing to do with you now. Why don't you let me go? Enough? Of course not. Ling Jing pinched her chin and enjoyed the anger in her eyes. A beauty was a beauty. Even when she was angry, she had her own style. Didn't I say it? You treat me, young Master Ling, as a toy boy. No matter what, you have to let me get back at you, right? Ling Jing, is it interesting for you to do this? Su Peijian really hated that she didn't have a knife in her hand. Otherwise, she would have stabbed Ling Jing's body without hesitation. Why not? I think it's very interesting. Ling Jing gently picked up her chin. The previous account, plus these 2 slaps, do you think I want to get back 2 cities? Su Peijian wasn't angered by Ling Jing. She calmed down immediately after a short moment of anger. If she was angry, it would be what he wanted. She wouldn't allow it. What if I refuse? Don't tell me you want to lock me up like this. There's no reason not to. Ling Jing spread out her hands indifferently. Do you think you can leave if I don't let go? Ling Jing. This is illegal imprisonment. If you say so, then so be it. Do you want to call the police? Ling Jing took out her phone and handed it to Su Peijian. Make a call. Press 11 to 0. Let's see if the police can get you out. Shameless. Ling Jing, how dare you? I said, you can try. See if I dare or not. Ling Jing chuckled and looked at the slight anger on Su Peijian's face. He only found it interesting. Very interesting. He really couldn't wait to know how Su Peijian planned to leave this place. Su Peijian didn't expect Ling Jing to do what he said. Her bag had been taken away by him a long time ago. There was no cell phone, no way to contact the outside world. Not only that, Ling Jing didn't even give her clothes to wear. She found a bathrobe in the bathroom and put it on. But she couldn't leave just like that. What's more, there were people guarding outside the room. If the people guarding didn't let her go, she couldn't leave at all. 3 days, a whole 3 days. No matter what Su Peijian did, she couldn't get the people guarding the door to let her go. If Ling Jing came back, the people guarding the door would leave. But with Ling Jing there, it was impossible for her to leave. 3 meals were sent to the room, and magazines and books were sent to her to read. The only thing was that she couldn't leave. On the 3rd day, Su Peijian felt that she was about to lose all her patience. She refused to eat. When she saw Ling Jing enter the door in a formal suit, she finally couldn't control her anger and rushed in front of Ling Jing. Ling Jing, what do you want? Didn't I say? I want to keep you. Are you keeping me? You're imprisoning me. Su Peijian raised her hand and was about to slap Ling Jing, but he grabbed her hand. She wanted to pull her hand back, but she couldn't. Ling Jing, are you going to let me go or not? Almost, it's the same thing. Ling Jing spread his hands. It's not impossible for me to let you go. But will you come back here obediently? In your dreams. Su Peijian didn't expect Ling Jing to be so shameless. She thought that he should have had enough fun with the previous farce. If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Ling Jing raised his eyebrows rather shamelessly, looking as if he couldn't do anything to her. Su Peijian nodded angrily. Okay. I promise you. Can you let me go now? No. Ling Jing seemed to know what she was thinking. If you want to leave, you can. Sign a contract with me first. As long as you sign it, I promise to let you go immediately. What contract? What contract? Of course it's a keeping agreement. You won't forget what you did to me back then, right? Su Peijian clenched her fists. She finally understood that Ling Jing would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He would do what she had done to him before. Okay. Sign a contract, right? Give it to me. I'll sign it. When Su Peijian finished this sentence, she felt as if something was pressing on her heart. But I have to have a deadline, right? After all, when I kept you, I didn't say that I would keep you for a lifetime. Half a year. Ling Jing smiled. Just half a year. I told you, I'm just doing what you've done to me to you. Half a year. Su Peijian felt her heart tighten. Finally, she suddenly smiled. Okay, half a year it is. Having a deadline was better than not having a deadline. She agreed, and Ling Jing was satisfied. She clapped her hands and called Gu Xiu to prepare the contract. Su Peijian watched Gu Xiu come and go, then looked at the bathrobe on her body. Now, can you return my clothes and bag to me? Of course. Ling Jing nodded. But forget about the clothes. That day, you vomited all over me. It was an eyesore, so I threw that set of clothes away. He gave an order, and soon someone brought the clothes. They were hung on the rack. From the inside to the outside, everything was available. They were all the latest models of several big brands. Su Peijian took a deep breath and put on a random set of clothes, not caring whether Ling Jing was beside her or not. If she wanted to see it, she would have seen it all long ago. There was no need to be reserved at this time. Ling Jing liked Su Peijian's magnanimity. However, when he thought of the photos he had received before, his face darkened. He didn't know how many men she had slept with to train her magnanimity. He suddenly gritted his teeth and buckled Su Peijian, who had already put on the clothes, into his arms without thinking. He lowered his head and gave her a very simple and rough kiss. Su Peijian didn't know why he suddenly went crazy and couldn't help but struggle. Ling Jing still wanted to pull her clothes. Su Peijian didn't expect him to be like this. He could go into heat almost any time and anywhere. For a moment, she was extremely angry. She had clearly agreed to sign the contract, but she still didn't want to be treated like a prostitute by Ling Jing. She raised her foot and was about to kick Ling Jing's crotch. Someone knocked on the door of the room, and Ling Jing stopped for a moment. He heard Gu Xiu's head at the door of the room behind him lowered so tightly that it was almost buried in his chest. "Young master. What's the matter? There's a guest." "Guest? What guest? I don't want to see him." "The guest has come in and said he wants to see you." "Are Ming and his people doing nothing?" "Stop him." "No, this guest has a special identity. I don't dare to stop him." Gu Xiu's words made Ling Jing look in his direction. Gu Xiu looked at him, and then looked at Su Peijian. Ling Jing roughly understood. He slightly frowned, let go of Su Peijian, and walked downstairs. Downstairs, Su Qingsang came to the door with at least 20 police officers. She walked in front of the police officers with a cold expression. When Ling Jing went downstairs, he saw Su Qingsang standing in front of the 20 police officers at a glance. He slightly narrowed his eyes. Instead of pretending not to know Su Qingsang, he took a few steps forward. "Mrs. Hua, what are you doing?" Su Qingsang glanced at Ling Jing coldly. She had an impression of this Ling Jing. She had seen him once in the hospital. Later, when she heard that Su Peijian had broken up with her boyfriend, she thought it was just an ordinary man. Unexpectedly, it was the young master of the Ling family. "Young Master Ling, you're too polite. I heard that my sister is here. I'm here to take her away today." He used the word heard, but his attitude was extremely firm. They both knew that Su Qingsang had done her homework. "Your sister?" Ling Jing raised his eyebrows. "But your sister stayed here voluntarily." "Mrs. Hua, it doesn't seem appropriate for you to make such a big scene, does it?" "Whether it's appropriate or not, I don't care for the time being. As long as young Master Ling hands over my sister, I won't disturb you. You can take them away immediately." Mrs. Hua's words are interesting. "I've already said that your sister stayed willingly. How did it become that I forced her to stay? Whether it is or not, won't you know when my sister comes down?" Ling Jing's expression was a little ugly. The Ling family was powerful, but they really didn't want to have a conflict with the people of the legal world. Su Qingsang had come with such a big scene. He had already discussed it with Su Peijian. Wouldn't this change again? What? Does young Master Ling want someone to go up and search? "Mrs. Hua, even if you are the wife of the CEO of Tianyu Group, I don't think you have the right to search my house, do you?" "I don't have the right." Su Peijian took a step to the side. "But they do." As soon as she stepped back, the policeman standing next to her took out a search warrant. Su Qingsang stood there with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. "My sister has been missing for more than 24 hours. Since I suspect that she is here, I will naturally do my homework. So, please let her go." Young Master Ling Jing's expression was very ugly. Gu Xiu next to him looked at him. Although they were not afraid of the police, it was very unwise to have a conflict with these people like this. If the ancient cultivators could figure it out, then Ling Jing could naturally figure it out as well. He turned to look at Gu Xiu. Gu Xiu understood and went upstairs to call Su Peijian. Su Peijian was originally waiting for Ling Jing to bring the contract so that she could sign it and leave. For her, it was only half a year. What was the point? She would spend half a year with Ling Jing. Half a year would let her see Ling Jing clearly and completely give up on him. When the time was up, she could return to the proud and free Su Peijian. However, she didn't see Ling Jing come upstairs, but Gu Xiu came. She had seen this person many times in the past few days. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was Ling Jing's right-hand man. "Miss Su, please go downstairs." Gu Xiu looked at Su Peijian. He really didn't expect that his young master would make such a big scene when he was in a relationship. "Go downstairs." Su Peijian thought about it and agreed. After going downstairs to sign the contract, she could leave. At the thought of signing a contract with Ling Jing for half a year, she felt extremely ironic. Speaking of which, she used to be the eldest daughter of the Su family. In the future, she would be reduced to a mistress who could not see the light of day. What was this? Retribution. However, Su Peijian didn't expect that when she went downstairs, she would see a group of police officers and Su Qingsang. "You." Her lips moved, and she wanted to say something. Su Qingsang gave her a look, walked in front of her, and squeezed her hand. "Mom was very worried about you. It's good that you're fine." Without saying anything else, Su Qingsang brought her to her side. "You go with these police officers first. I still have a few words to say to Mr. Ling." Su Qingsang's appearance surprised Su Peijian. She didn't expect Su Qingsang to come. She wanted to say something, but when she received Su Qingsang's gaze, she left with the police without looking back. Ling Jing had been staring at Su Peijian's face. He didn't expect that woman to be so heartless. She was so heartless that she didn't even look at him. There seemed to be a fire burning in his heart, burning so much that he wanted to kill again. However, before the fire burned, Su Qingsang had already walked in front of him. The police had already taken Su Peijian out. Su Qingsang had no scruples. She raised her hand and slapped Ling Jing's face. Ling Jing froze for a moment and immediately glared at Su Qingsang. "You, young Master Ling, right?" Su Qingsang looked at Ling Jing, not afraid of his cold eyes at all. "I have other things to do today, but I want to say something to young Master Ling. The girls of our Su family can't be bullied by anyone." "Mrs. Hua, what do you mean?" "Nothing." Su Qingsang retracted her hand and gently patted it. "The internal conflicts of our family are our own private affairs, but young Master Ling bullied our children like this. Isn't he looking down on our Su family?" She stared at Ling Jing, her eyes full of coldness. "That's right. Our Su family may not have any power in Rome City, and our main development is in Lin City. But the children of our Su family can't be bullied by anyone. Young Master Ling, we'll see." "Mrs. Hua, are you trying to use your power to oppress people?" "I don't dare." Su Qingsang smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I don't have power. Although I'm not talented, my husband has some ability. Your Ling family is powerful. But our Hua family is not afraid of trouble. Mrs. Hua, do you want the Hua family to go against the Ling family? Whether it's right or wrong depends on young Master Ling. I'm a medical student, and I like to be direct. I just have one thing to say. Next time, please stay away from our patient, young Master Ling. She's not someone you can touch." Ling Jing gritted her teeth and nodded. "What if I insist?" "Then you can try, young Master Ling. What will the result be if you go against the Hua family and the Su family?" Young Master Ling, please believe me. Based on my husband's feelings for me, I can still do such a small thing. She had always been low-key and didn't like to bully others. But the feeling of bullying others occasionally wasn't bad. Ling Jing's expression was very ugly. Su Qingsang didn't want to pay attention to him at all. She turned around and left. As soon as she went out, Ling Jing got angry and swept all the things on the coffee table to the ground. Gu Xiao and a dozen subordinates standing beside him didn't even dare to breathe. Su Qingsang didn't care how crazy Ling Jing was. She went out, and Su Peijian sat in her car. She didn't care about her and thanked the police first. If it weren't for the Huo family and the Ling family's power, she wouldn't have wanted to trouble these people. However, the Huo family usually had a good relationship with these people. Although those people were ordered by the higher-ups to run errands, there was really no big problem. Such a task was really simple. After the pleasantries, Su Qingsang sent the police away and got into the car. Looking at Su Peijian, she took a thermos cup from the front of the car. Drink some flower tea. Su Peijian glanced at her and took the cup from her hand. It was still afternoon. She looked at the dazzling sunlight outside and then at Su Qingsang. How did you know I was here? You didn't contact your family for 3 days. Aunt Xiang was worried that something had happened to you. She wanted to go to the police, but she was afraid that there would be a misunderstanding, so she begged me. I asked Hua Jinyao's people to check, asked your company's secretary, and checked the surveillance cameras of the club that day. But the surveillance cameras were broken, and we couldn't see what happened 3 days ago. So I could only speculate from the owner of the club. Later, after checking several surveillance cameras outside, I found out that it was Ling Jing who took you away. Su Peijian's expression was a little bad. She held the thermos cup tightly, and when the flower tea went down her throat, she felt much better. Let's go, I'll take you home. Okay. Su Peijian didn't know what to say. She never thought that one day she would have to trouble Su Qingsang to save her. Su Qingsang started the car and heard Su Peijian speak very softly beside her. Actually, I already made him promise to let me go just now. Are you saying that I'm nosy? Su Qingsang just focused on driving, and her expression didn't look slow at all. Thank you. Su Peijian didn't mean that. Su Qingsang glanced at her. Back where? To Aunt Xiang's place. Yes. Su Qingsang focused on driving and stopped talking. She sent Su Peijian to the door. Watching her get out of the car, she remembered. Don't feel burdened. Mom asked me to take care of you. After all, I'm your sister now. Su Peijian looked at her. Su Qingsang smiled, turned around, started the car, and left. Su Peijian was left looking at the shadow of the car in the distance, and her expression was a little strange. Sister. It seemed like the feeling of having a sister wasn't too bad. Su Peijian's gloomy mood for the past few days was swept away. As for Ling Jing, she wouldn't give him another chance, and she believed that he wouldn't come again. Chapter 870. Su Peijian didn't know what Su Qingsang said to Ling Jing that day. After that day, she never saw Ling Jing again. She comforted Xiang Kaiping and told her that she just went to stay with a friend for a few days and forgot to contact her. Although Xiang Kaiping didn't believe her, she was happy that she could come back safely. Xiang Kaiping didn't ask much of her. As long as she came home often and was safe, everything else was fine. However, she was still worried about her. Su Peijian's new duplex had just been renovated. Xiang Kaiping thought about it and decided to move to the duplex with Su Peijian. In fact, she also thought that the villa was too big for her to live alone. However, she had made some money and had nowhere to spend it, so she bought a villa. There were a lot of things to prepare for moving. Xiang Kaiping was busy, and she was in a much better state of mind. Su Peijian watched her busy and started to get busy herself. She felt a little sorry for Lin Feixing. She specially asked him out to apologize to him. After all, if it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been bullied by Ling Jing. However, she didn't expect that Lin Feixing didn't seem to know why he was bullied that day. He didn't wait for her to find him. He came to her first. "I'm sorry." Lin Feixing apologized to Su Peijian as soon as he saw her. Su Peijian was confused by this. "I had dinner with you that day, but I got into a conflict with someone and was locked up for a few days." Lin Feixing also felt that he was really unlucky. "I don't know who the other party is. They locked me up for a few days before letting me go. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't even know who the other party was." He scratched his head. It was the first time for Lin Feixing to be so embarrassed in front of the woman he liked. "I'm really sorry. Have you been worried sick these past few days?" Su Peijian couldn't say anything. She wanted to apologize. She could only smile faintly and finally twitch the corner of her mouth. "It's okay. I'm just a little worried about you. I'm sorry." Lin Feixing smiled and brought up another matter. "We didn't have dinner last time. To apologize, let's make an appointment again and let me make it up to you. How about that?" "No need." Su Peijian couldn't say that he got into trouble because of her. "I should be the one treating you. I'm just trying to calm you down." "Sure." Lin Feixing smiled. "That's cheaper for me." Lin Feixing was just like that. You would never feel uncomfortable when you were around him. Su Peijian smiled. She set a time with him and went back to work. She took 2 calls from Hui Yifan, but she ignored them and hung up. In the end, Hui Yifan stopped calling. This time, Su Peijian purposely picked a revolving restaurant on the top floor of a 5-star hotel to treat Lin Feixing to dinner. She had asked around. This was the property of Hu Jinyao, Tang Mohan's family. It had nothing to do with Ling Jing. She believed that Ling Jing would not disturb her again, but she had to take precautions. In the future, she would avoid Ling Jing's family's business if she could. The hotel was on the top floor, overlooking most of Rong City. Su Peijian arrived early. When she arrived, a waiter came over and led her to the seat she had reserved in advance. Her seat was next to the display window. She glanced out of the window. As night fell, the neon lights began to shine. While he was enjoying the beautiful scenery, Lin Feixing arrived. He was dressed very formally today. He was wearing a white suit, which made him look clean and neat. He looked a little like a Prince Charming. She couldn't help but think of another man who was also wearing a white suit. That image made her expression change slightly for a moment. She retracted her gaze and took the initiative to stand up. "I'm late." Lin Feixing was a little apologetic. "Did you wait long?" "No, I just arrived." "Have a seat." After ordering, Lin Feixing looked at Su Peijian. "Peijian." "Yes." "I actually wanted to ask, did you break up with that person?" He didn't say who, but Su Peijian immediately understood what he meant. She looked down and thought of the scene where Ling Jing arrogantly said that he wanted to provide for her. Suddenly, she smiled. She looked up at Lin Feixing with a calm and natural gaze. "You want to ask if I broke up? Am I single now?" Lin Feixing was relieved. He had a lot of women chasing after him outside. But he didn't know why he liked Su Peijian. Su Peijian's attitude made him relax a little. "Yes, I want to ask you, if I'm single now, I might be able to pursue you again." Su Peijian was silent for a while and looked up at Lin Feixing. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's okay. Lin Feixing didn't seem surprised at all. I was rude. I'm single, but I don't plan to start a new relationship for the time being. The incident with Ling Jing had hurt her. She probably wouldn't have the strength to love anyone in a short period of time. She needed time to forget Ling Jing and to let go. Understood. Lin Feixing looked at the gloomy expression on her face and said very carefully, then, can I queue up first? That way, I can fight for a chance for myself. You don't have to. Su Peijian shook her head. It's not fair to use you to forget another man. What if I don't mind? I mind. She didn't like to owe people. She had always been proud, so naturally, she wouldn't allow herself to do such a thing. Then I have no hope at all, right? Lin Feixing joked. He didn't look like he took it to heart, but in fact, he was still a little disappointed. I can only promise you that if there's a chance, I'll definitely let you jump the queue first. How about that? Lin Feixing smiled and raised the glass in front of him. In that case, I'll reserve it. She really didn't feel any burden to be with someone like Lin Feixing. Su Peijian looked at him and thought more than once that if she fell in love with Lin Feixing, she would probably be much happier. However, in this world, there were no ifs. After this date, she and Lin Feixing were back to being friends. Su Qinghui's company was still working with Lin Feixing's company. As Su Qinghui's representative, she couldn't avoid meeting Lin Feixing. The few times they met after that were all in the company. However, after the final execution of a case and the lawsuit, Lin Feixing proposed to treat her and the people from his company to dinner, and she agreed. After all, she wasn't alone. However, this company referred to the team that Su Qinghui left in Rong City. They were the core members. There weren't many people, only a dozen or so. Lin Feixing booked a large private room in the hotel and asked Su Peijian to bring them there when the time came. Su Peijian agreed and brought the group of people to the place Lin Feixing mentioned. They all arrived, but Lin Feixing didn't. He was stuck in a traffic jam and was quite far away, so he arrived a little late. Su Peijian's phone just happened to ring. She got up and went outside to answer the call. Coincidentally, she bumped into Lin Feixing, who was rushing over. She walked very fast and bumped into Lin Feixing's arms. Sorry. She moved away from Lin Feixing's arms and smiled at him awkwardly. She gestured for Lin Feixing to enter the private room first. Aren't you going in? No, I have to take a call first. Su Peijian's phone was still ringing. Lin Feixing nodded and entered the private room. After he left, Su Peijian was about to answer the call when she saw Hui Yifan walking toward her. Seeing him, Su Peijian took her phone and walked to the other side of the corridor without thinking. Little did she know that Hui Yifan would quickly follow her. Hui Yifan blocked Su Peijian at the end of the corridor. His action made Su Peijian hang up the phone. She crossed her arms and looked at Hui Yifan coldly. What's the matter? Why can't I call you only if I have something to say? Can't we be old lovers catching up? I have nothing to talk about with you. Su Peijian looked at him coldly. Please get out of my way. You're quite capable. Hui Yifan thought about the scene he just saw of Su Peijian hugging another man. You dumped one after another. I don't know what you're talking about. Su Peijian felt very speechless that she actually thought of cooperating with Hui Yifan. If she had known that Hui Yifan was such a sore loser, she would never have cooperated with such a person. You don't know what I'm talking about. What about that Ling Jing from before? Didn't you guys live together? Why aren't you together anymore? Su Peijian suddenly narrowed her eyes and stared at Hui Yifan. What Ling Jing? What do you know? I know a lot. Hui Yifan smiled. Not only do I know that Ling Jing is the young master of the Ling family, but I also know that he dumped you, don't I? Hui Yifan. She didn't even know that Ling Jing was the young master of the Ling family. How did Hui Yifan know? I was wondering why you didn't get back together with me. It turns out that you hooked up with the young master of the Ling family. But what a pity. So what if you hooked up with him? Didn't he still dump you? Does it have anything to do with you? Or does young Master Hu think that I'm going to jump into your arms because I've been dumped? Of course it has something to do with me. Although I know that you can't jump into my arms, I can't let you be too proud, can I? Su Peijian could hear something wrong from Hui Yifan's words. What did you do? What did I do? Hui Yifan smiled. Actually, I didn't do anything. I just changed some of the photos we took together in the past and photoshopped a few photos to send to Ling Jing. Seeing Su Peijian's slightly changed expression, the smile on his face became more and more proud. I thought you had a good eye. You could find a good man after you kicked me, but what happened in the end? It was just a few photoshopped photos, just a few provocative words, just 2 videos, and he dumped you. I think that young Master Ling is nothing more than this. Su Peijian was very smart. Hui Yifan's words immediately reminded her of the scene when Ling Jing and his mother appeared in her apartment that day. At that time, when Ling Jing saw her, his first reaction was obviously guilt, embarrassment, and confusion, but then his expression changed. She was too sad at that time and didn't notice the change in Ling Jing's attitude. Chapter 871. Thinking of Ling Jing that day, a trace of heartache welled up in her heart again. She suppressed the trace of pain. She knew that as time passed, she would become more and more accustomed to that kind of pain, and it would become fainter and fainter. She couldn't say how she felt, but Su Peijian was naturally not afraid of Hui Yifan. Her voice was very vicious as she sneered. Young Master Ling is nothing, and you, young Master Hua, are even less so. Yes, Ling Jing is a bastard. He has no brains and casually believed a few photoshopped photos. But who do you think you are, Hui Yifan? Hui Yifan's frozen face, she smiled lightly. What's the difference between you and Ling Jing? There's no difference. If you can't have it, you will destroy it. You can even do something like having sex. If old Master Hu knew that his grandson still did such things after being released from prison, I'm afraid he would want to send you back to prison, right? I what? Am I wrong? Su Peijian raised her eyebrows, and her beautiful eyes were full of coldness. The Hua family's upbringing is for you to threaten a woman. Is it for you to Photoshop a woman's sex? The Hua family is really good at upbringing. Su Peijian, do you want to die? Hui Yifan was furious and raised his hand to grab Su Peijian. She took a step back. Hui Yifan, if I were you, I would never do it. Maybe you should go and find out what Su Qingsang did a few days ago. She's my sister. You know that she's not only the young mistress of the Hua family, but also the wife of the CEO of Tianyu Group. By the way, she also gave birth to a pair of very cute twins for the Hua family. Old Master Hua treats her like his own granddaughter. Are you sure you want to offend her for me? Who didn't know how to bully others? She used to be good at it. Now that he was using Su Qingsang's identity, he believed that she wouldn't mind. Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes, his hand hanging in the air without moving. Hui Yifan, for the sake of our acquaintance, let me give you a piece of advice. If I were you, I would tuck my tail between my legs and keep a low profile. Perhaps your old man will take pity on you, and you might even get some other opportunities. As for me, you don't have to provoke me. After all, even if I'm not the daughter of the Li family, as long as I'm Su Qingsang's sister, you can't touch me. Unless you really want to go back to prison. You know that Hui Jinyao has that ability. Hui Yifun's expression was very ugly. Su Peijian looked at him coldly. She was not in the mood to stay any longer, nor was she in the mood to make another call. He turned around and went back to the private room without looking back. Damn it. After her figure disappeared, Hui Yifun kicked the wall angrily. *tch, you better pray that you don't fall into my hands in this lifetime. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. Just as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The newcomer was tall and somewhat thin. A dangerous glint flickered in her beautiful almond-shaped eyes. Hui Yifun suddenly froze. You are. A heavy and fast punch landed on his face. His body was knocked to the side. He thought that this was the end, but unexpectedly, the other party's fist came even more fiercely. Hui Yifun was no match for him at all. Ling Jing's life had been a bit rough recently. First of all, he was scolded by his own father. The reason was that Hui Jinyao had people secretly and openly suppressed the Ling family's business. The Ling family had power, so did the Hu family. Not to mention that the Hu family had power in both the military and the underworld. Hui Jinyao didn't need to do much. He just made a few reports and let people say that the Ling family's businesses were dirty. That was enough. After that, the police would go to the Ling family's businesses from time to time to conduct temporary inspections. Although they couldn't find anything, it more or less affected the business. This made the old man very angry. He called him back to the old house and scolded him, asking him why he had to provoke the Hu family. He let the matter go. It wasn't difficult to solve. After all, the Ling family still had the Ling family's power. Those people didn't dare to go too far even if they caused a few trouble. However, there was another matter that made him feel unhappy. Something happened to the Ling family, he naturally had to step in and solve it. After it was solved, the Hu family finally quieted down. When he was free, he found something that made him very depressed. It had been nearly 6 months since Su Peijian stepped out of his villa. More than 6 months, it took less than a month to solve the Ling family's problem. When everything calmed down and he wanted to resume his life as the young master of the Ling family, he realized that he couldn't arouse any interest in the women sent by others. It didn't matter if they were pretty and adorable, or youthful and bright, or if they were charming, or if they were flirtatious. At first, he didn't think there was a problem, but after looking at them again, he found them boring. They were very boring. There was always a lack of taste in their eyes, and their manners were lacking elegance. If it was a lady from a wealthy family, he would feel a little bored. He didn't like the dignified ones, and he thought that the slutty ones were too slutty. He thought that the passionate ones were too proactive, and the cold ones were too pretentious. In 6 months, he had changed more than 20 women. However, none of them could arouse his interest. This made him very unhappy, and this kind of unhappiness had accumulated to the peak today. Today, he had an appointment with a foreign partner company to discuss the route cooperation. Not only did the company's president come, but he also brought a glamorous and exotic girl. The girl seemed to be interested in him. As soon as she came in, she not only winked at him, but also took the opportunity to put her hand on his leg. The meaning of flirting was very obvious. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, clear facial features, and was so enthusiastic and proactive. If it were in the past, he would have done it without any problem. However, today, he actually felt tired. The other party's enthusiasm made him tired, the smell of the other party's perfume made him tired, and the other party's actions made him even more tired. He used the excuse of making a phone call to let Gu Xiu deal with the group of people, and he came out to get some fresh air. He asked someone to bring a pack of cigarettes over, and he stood in the bathroom at the end of the corridor to smoke. He was wondering what was wrong with him. Should he go for a physical examination? There was no need. He knew his own body very well, and his reaction every morning was normal. But why couldn't he get excited about those women? He thought that maybe those women were too inferior. They couldn't arouse his interest. Puffing out smoke rings, he felt bored. He was about to throw the cigarette back into the private room when he heard the sound of arguing in the corner of the corridor outside. Coincidentally, that female voice sounded very familiar to him. Su Peijian, thinking of this woman, Ling Jing still had a toothache. That day, Su Qingsang slapped him in the face and warned him to stay away from Su Peijian. What was rare was that she was just a prisoner. She was just playing around. Who would take it seriously? Did they really think that he, young Master Ling, couldn't have Su Peijian? What a joke. Thinking this, Ling Jing unconsciously clenched his fists. That damned woman, she dumped him one moment, and then she was here with another man the next. She couldn't even get herself involved. It was simply despicable. Before he could go out to see what kind of man Su Peijian had her eyes on, Su Peijian's next conversation with that man made his body unable to move. Does it have anything to do with you? Or do you, young Master Hua, think that I'm going to jump into your arms because I've been dumped? Of course it has something to do with me. Although I know that you can't jump into my arms, I can't let you be too proud, can I? What did you do? What did I do? Actually, I didn't do anything. I just changed the photos we took together in the past, photoshopped a few photos, and sent them to Ling Jing. I thought that you had good taste. You could find a good man after you kicked me, but what happened in the end? It was just a few photoshopped photos, just a few provocative words, just 2 videos, and he dumped you. I think that young Master Ling is nothing more than this. Photoshopped. Ling Jing's temples throbbed. The cigarette had burned to the end, but he didn't notice it at all. He still remembered how he felt when he saw those photos and videos. Anger, resentment, rage, and the urge to destroy and kill. But those photos were photoshopped. He, Ling Jing, actually fell for such a trick. Such a simple and crude provocation without any technical content had succeeded in making him believe it. Not only did he believe it, but he really, Ling Jing didn't have time to react, and Su Peijian's next words were like another slap on his face. Yes, Ling Jing is a bastard. He has no brains. He casually believed a few photoshopped photos. Damn that woman, who gave her the right to say that about him? Who? However, the cigarette had burned to his fingertips, but Ling Jing didn't feel it. He just had an impulse to go out and take a look at Su Peijian. He wanted to rush out and explain to that woman, to ask her why she said that he had no brains. But thinking of his previous actions, Ling Jing's footsteps were frozen, and he couldn't move a step. Su Peijian said that he dumped her. Yes, she was the woman he dumped. But, Ling Jing, let's be together. Go and learn, and when you're done, you'll be able to learn. After you finish your studies, I will invest in a pastry bakery. I will let you be your own boss. I don't despise you. Ling Jing, people don't need to care about other people's opinions when they are alive. But this world has its own rules, and we can only work hard to live according to our own hearts. Ling Jing, I like you. Ling Jing. I want to give you a gift to celebrate your first day at work. Ling Jing. The cigarette at his fingertips fell to the ground, but Ling Jing didn't notice it at all. Many scenes from when the two of them lived together flashed through his mind. Su Peijian said a lot of things, and every expression she made when they were together. She wasn't a very patient person. She couldn't even be called a good woman in the traditional sense. But she really tolerated and liked him. Even if he was just a pretty boy at that time. But he knew that Su Peijian's feelings for him were real. She used to plan his future very seriously. She used to think about the possibility of the two of them being together. She really liked him. Su-Peision. She really liked him. The kind that she liked very much. When she realized this, Ling Jing felt a sharp pain in her heart. If those photos were fake, then how hurtful would the words he said that day and the things he did later be? After he said those hurtful words that day, how sad would Su-Peision be? Didn't young Master Ling say that I'm a prisoner? Young Master Ling, don't you think it's beneath your status to keep a prisoner like me? That day, when Su-Peision mentioned the word prisoner, although her expression was sarcastic, there was a flash of pain in her eyes. At that time, he only felt carefree because he finally made Su-Peision beg him. But now, he only wanted to strangle himself. Yes. As the dignified young master of the Ling family, I, Su-Peision, wronged you to be my pretty boy. Speaking of which, it was indeed my fault. I just don't know how young Master Ling plans to teach me a lesson. Some things couldn't be thought about. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. The Ling Jing who always felt that he was unhappy in his heart. The Ling Jing who always felt that he was obsessed with Su-Peision because she was unwilling to be treated as a pretty boy by him. The Ling Jing who always thought that he was just giving her a taste of her own medicine and just wanted to teach Su-Peision a lesson. At this time, he was finally willing to face his own heart. It wasn't like that. It never was. It was really unhappy, unwilling, and he couldn't take it lying down. He had 10,000 ways to teach Su-Peision a lesson. Why did he insist on making her fall in love with him? Why did he always want to be entangled with her? Because she was her, the one and only Su-Peision. The Su-Peision who was especially attractive, especially charming, and especially different. And the woman he loved. Yes, Ling Jing was finally willing to admit it at this time. He fell in love with Su-Peision. He fell in love with the arrogant, delicate, indifferent, yet passionate, selfish, yet kind Su-Peision who had her own bottom line. Because he fell in love with Su-Peision, so the women after that could no longer enter his eyes. Because he fell in love with Su-Peision, so he had no interest in those women. Because he fell in love with Su-Peision, so he was so angry when he saw those photos. He didn't even distinguish whether they were real or fake. He was just jealous, so jealous that he wanted to kill. And because he fell in love with Su-Peision, even if he knew that she had more than one man, even if he knew that Su-Peision didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore, he still stubbornly wanted to create opportunities to give himself a chance with her. Because he loved her, the subconscious in his heart knew it clearly. So he tried his best to stay by that woman's side, or let her stay by his side. The impulse in his heart was more honest than he thought. But he didn't know that he had never loved anyone, never. His frivolity and cynicism had become a habit. He liked to control everything in his hands, whether it was things or people. But Su-Peision was never something he could control. She wasn't an ordinary woman. He didn't know this, he didn't understand. He didn't understand what his self-righteous decisions and actions had made him lose. Chapter 872. His emotions were constantly tumbling, and his thoughts were chaotic and tangled. It was only a matter of a few minutes. The dispute outside ended, and the footsteps faded away, but he heard Hui Yifan's voice. At that moment, he finally lost control. Without thinking, he rushed out and waved his fist at Hui Yifan. Su-Peision was his woman. If he wanted to do something to her, he had to ask for his permission first. What's more, this damn man. If it weren't for him, how could he have misunderstood? If he hadn't misunderstood, how could things have developed to the point where they were out of control? One punch after another, he hit very hard. A fire was ignited in his heart again, and this fire was even stronger than the previous one, making him want to kill more. The urge to destroy everything was so obvious. He could only drag Hui Yifan in front of him and constantly vent his inner anger. Until Gu Xiu appeared, until the representative of the other party's partner company also came, he finally stopped and looked coldly at Hui Yifan, who had been beaten black and blue by him. If you dare to touch a finger of her, I will definitely let you die with her. You can try. Let me see if I can do it. After saying this, he didn't even have the mood to talk about cooperation with the other party's company. He went to Su Peijian's private room. He wanted to find her. He must find her, he must tell her, perhaps his aura was too amazing, and his eyes were too scary. The representative sent by the partner was frightened by him. The beauty with hair and blue eyes who had just wanted to hook up with him began to retreat, for fear of provoking Ling Jing. Ling Jing didn't care what they did. Although this hotel wasn't his, it was easy to ask which private room Su Peijian was in. Su Peijian, when Ling Jing's footsteps reached the door of the private room, he suddenly stopped. After a reincarnation, Rong City once again entered December. He didn't know where the cold wind blew from the corridor, but it made him feel a lot more awake. He leaned against the wall, and his mind was in a mess. Go to Su Peijian now. Say what? How to say? Ling Jing just stood outside the private room for a long time and couldn't move. The hand on the wall was still exerting force at first, but then it slowly loosened and finally drooped down weakly. What should he do? Su Peijian had no idea what was going on outside. She was happily chatting with her colleagues in the private room. Su Chenghui naturally had a good eye for people. Although he wasn't in Rong City often, the people he hired were truly capable. The meal was enjoyable. After the meal, she didn't reject Lin Feixing's offer to send her home. In fact, they were all drunk and couldn't drive, so they found a designated driver. Lin Feixing got into the car and asked Su Peijian where she was going. Su Peijian told him the address of her new house. She had moved to a duplex with Xiang Kaiping. The house was bigger than Rome Garden, but smaller than the villa. It was very convenient to go out. The main thing was that she had been coming home every day recently. Xiang Kaiping was finally very satisfied. Although Xiang Kaiping knew that Xiang Kaiping had been drinking, she could understand this kind of social interaction. Are you okay? I saw you drink quite a lot just now. No. Su Peijian smiled and shook her head. I know. Don't worry. I'm not drunk. Lin Feixing looked at her pretty face in the night. I'd rather you were drunk. Su Peijian didn't respond to him. Instead, she turned her head and looked out of the car window. Lin Feixing couldn't hide his disappointment, but Su Peijian didn't notice. The car stopped at Su Peijian's apartment and she got out. Lin Feixing followed her out and asked the driver to wait for him. He walked her to the door. Let's stop here. I'll go up myself. Thank you for today. If you really want to thank me, why don't you invite me up? It's okay. My mom is at home. I know Aunt Xiang too. I don't think she will mind. Su Peijian turned to look at him. She looked very serious. I mind. Lin Feixing didn't know how to respond to such a straightforward answer. Su Peijian was about to enter the door when Lin Feixing stopped her again. Are you planning to stop dating for the rest of your life? No. Su Peijian shook her head. She looked very calm. I'm just a little tired. Tired? Lin Feixing nodded and suddenly smiled. Have a good rest then. I'll wait for you to rest. It was a pun. They both understood what the other meant. She understood, and so did he. Good night. After seeing Lin Feixing off, Su Peijian felt a little tired. After a few months, Lin Feixing was filled with hope. But in fact, she didn't have that kind of thought. Life was good now. She was very satisfied. Peace and tranquility. She went to work every day and spent time with Xiang Kaiping. Occasionally, when Su Qinghui and his wife came to Rong City, they would visit her, but not often. Usually, they contacted each other more by phone. Other than Su Qinghui and his wife, Su Yusin also called her often and sent her messages. It was as if he was afraid that she would take things too hard. In fact, they were thinking too much. She wouldn't take things too hard. Nothing was worth thinking about all the time. Even if there was, she would try her best to forget it. The elevator was at the corner of the entrance. There was a safety ladder next to it. Su Peijian walked inside. She suddenly felt a grip on her wrist. She was startled. Before she could react, her body had been pulled into the stairwell. Su Peijian almost screamed, but her scream was muffled by someone. Just like that, her voice was stuck in her throat. "Don't scream. It's me." His voice stopped Su Peijian struggling. The stairwell was dark, and the lights were controlled by voice. Ling Jing's voice was very soft, not enough to turn on the lights. With the light outside, she saw Ling Jing's face. At the same time, she smelled the alcohol on his body. Su Peijian calmed down and stopped struggling. Ling Jing also let go of her hand. As soon as he let go, Su Peijian went to pull the door of the stairwell. Her wrist was tightened again. She was pulled by Ling Jing again. Su Peijian turned to look at Ling Jing. With the light outside, she saw his face hidden in the darkness. The corners of his lips were raised with a hint of mockery. "What is young Master Ling doing?" "What? You don't want to be the young master of the Ling family anymore. Do you want to change your profession and become a robber?" The light was dim, so Ling Jing couldn't see her expression clearly. She was the same. Her body was suddenly hugged by Ling Jing. She didn't have time to react or struggle. That person had already buried his face in her neck. "I regret it." His deep, hoarse voice was accompanied by his warm breath brushing against her neck. She didn't move. Ling Jing spoke again in the darkness. "I regret it. I regret letting go of you." Holding her waist, Ling Jing's arms were very tight. His expression couldn't be seen clearly in the darkness, but there was a hint of eagerness in his voice. "Woman, I regret it. Woman, I want you." It was a very quiet atmosphere. After Ling Jing said that, Su Peijian didn't respond. He suddenly became very sure. What did Su Peijian mean? He let go of his hand, but didn't let go of her. He said again with uncertainty. "Let's start over, okay?" What greeted him was a slap on his face. Su Peijian was just angry. After the slap, she realized that she had lost control. Taking a deep breath, she pushed him away and wanted to turn around and leave. But her body was held by him again. Her body was pressed against the door behind her. "Are you angry? If you're angry, let's start over, okay?" Su Peijian raised her hand again, wanting to slap him again, but then put it down. She was a little breathless, and she resisted the suffocating feeling in her heart. She stared coldly at his face in the darkness. "Let go. I won't let go." Ling Jing held her very tightly, and there was a trace of imperceptible pleading in his voice. "Peijian, I really regret it. Let's start over, okay? I promise, this time, Ling Jing, young Master Ling." "Who do you think you are?" "What?" "Young Master Ling is used to being a young master. You think the world is your home, and you can do whatever you want." "Sorry, I'm not interested." She coldly pulled his hand away, but she couldn't. Su Peijian raised her foot and stomped hard on his foot. Ling Jing was in pain, but he refused to let go. Su Peijian was angry and looked at him coldly. But because she couldn't see his expression clearly, she stomped harder and harder. In the end, her foot was numb, but Ling Jing didn't let go of her. She could only withdraw her foot and look at him coldly. Ling Jing, have you had enough of being drunk? Ling Jing looked at her. In his dark phoenix eyes, there was regret, pain, discomfort, and pleading. Unfortunately, the darkness covered his expression, and she couldn't see it clearly. But even if she could see it clearly, Su Peijian wouldn't believe it now. Ling Jing realized this, and his expression became more and more bitter. I'm not drunk. I really regret it. So? You regret it. You want to start over, and I have to go back. Silence. For the first time in his life, Ling Jing felt speechless. Su Peijian's words made him speechless. It took him a long time to find his voice. I just want to start over with you. Start over with me. Su Peijian sneered, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Young Master Ling, do you really know what you're talking about? I'm a prisoner in labor reform. You want to start over with me, a prisoner in labor reform? Ling Jing felt like a needle was pricking his heart. Those 3 words were extremely grating to his ears. Don't say it. He was wrong, he was really wrong. He shouldn't have said those 3 words in front of her. Don't say what? Su Peijian blinked, as if she suddenly understood the flash of pain in his words. Don't say I'm a prisoner in labor reform. Ha! She smiled, and her smile was full of mockery. That's the truth. I'm just a prisoner in labor reform. Young Master Ling, you said that. Ling Jing's body stiffened, and his hand on her waist trembled a little. Don't say it, I beg you, don't say it. I'm sorry. Those 3 extremely obscure words came out of Ling Jing's mouth, which had always been proud. If there was a 3rd person present at this time, their jaw would probably drop. However, Su Peijian didn't feel anything after hearing it. Chapter 873. The stairwell was very quiet. At this time, no one passed by outside. Su Peijian's words were undoubtedly like a needle stabbing into Ling Jing's chest. It was so uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. No. Ling Jing shook his head, his expression full of bitterness. I'm serious this time. Believe me. It wasn't a game, not a show, not a trick. It was him who understood his sincerity and knew that he had been ridiculously wrong. He just wanted her. Serious. I don't know how much young Master Ling's seriousness is worth. Tell me, although I'm not short of money. But I'm really curious. How much can a prisoner like me be worth in young Master Ling's eyes? This time, how much money does young Master Ling plan to use to keep me? Words could sometimes turn into sharp blades. Every word Su Peijian said now was like a knife, stabbing Ling Jing's heart again and again. He suddenly realized that he, who had always thought that he was so strong that he could do anything and had no fear, also had times when he was afraid and didn't dare to face it. Don't say such things. I feel bad. Peijian, I don't want to keep you this time, and I don't want to play with you. I really just want to start over with you. He spoke very, very slowly. Every word he spat out made him feel pain. Really? Su Peijian sneered, obviously not believing him. Ling Jing was anxious, very anxious. He put his hands on her shoulders. Even if he couldn't see clearly, he wanted her to see the sincerity and seriousness in his eyes. Peijian, it was all my fault before. I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. I just. He was too proud. He was so proud that he couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of dislike from the woman he liked. He was so proud that he refused to give her a chance to explain so that he could pretend that he was the one who won. But in reality, he lost completely. Wrong? Su-Peijian felt his stiff body and pushed him away. You are young Master Ling, the young master of the Ling family. How could you be wrong? I'm the one who's wrong. I had eyes but failed to recognize you and treated you, young Master Ling, as a pretty boy to keep. I didn't know what was good for me. I didn't realize your identity in time and didn't respect you. It's all my fault. What can you do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong at all. Don't say any more. Don't say it. Ling Jing raised her voice uncontrollably. I beg you, don't say it. Su-Peijian did not say anything else. The atmosphere was eerily quiet. Su-Peijian could still feel her heart beating out of control. She took a step to the side. Standing in front of the stairwell door, she placed her hand on the doorknob. Turning around, she didn't intend to look at Ling Jing. She raised her head, and the scenes and fragments of their time together seemed to emerge in her mind again. There was a sharp pain in her heart, but she suppressed the pain expressionlessly. She pulled the door open and said in a calm voice, since young Master Ling doesn't want to hear it, then I won't say it. After all, I'm just a convict. I won't stay here and be an eyesore to young Master Ling. Young Master Ling wanted to play and do whatever he wanted to do. It was better to find someone else. I can't afford to accompany you. The door opened and closed, and her body disappeared outside the door. The bright light shone on her face. She squinted her eyes and raised her hand to block the light. At the same time, she suppressed the sourness in her eyes. Then, her footsteps were firm, and she walked in the direction of the elevator without looking back. The moment the door of the stairwell opened, there was light. Ling Jing could see Su-Peijian walk out expressionlessly. He stood in the shadows and only felt that the moment the light disappeared, his whole body also fell into darkness. His heart sank. Su-Peijian entered the elevator, her legs a little weak. She sighed and realized that she was still more or less affected by Ling Jing. However, she tried her best to reduce the impact. They hadn't seen each other for nearly half a year. She really didn't expect that Ling Jing would give her such a big gift as soon as he came. Did he regret it? Start over. Hee. Did he think that life was like a mobile phone that would be turned off and restarted when it got stuck? Then everything would be fine again. Moreover, she didn't believe Ling Jing's words at all. Maybe it was a sudden impulse, or maybe he felt that he had lost face in front of Su Qingsang back then. Adjusting her breathing, Su-Peijian smiled and threw those thoughts to the back of her mind. Some things should be left in the past. They should be blown away by the wind and disappear forever. Su-Peijian didn't expect that the things she thought had been blown away by the wind were not over. The next day, when she went downstairs to go to work, she saw Ling Jing again. She parked her car at the company yesterday. It wasn't far from the company, and she planned to walk to the company. It would be a good exercise. Unexpectedly seeing Ling Jing in front of her, she paused for a moment, but only for a moment. Soon, she continued to walk forward as if nothing had happened. Her steps were neither fast nor slow. She didn't want Ling Jing to think that his appearance could affect her mood. It was very cold in Rong City in December. It hadn't snowed this year, but the wind made people feel cold. Su-Peijian was wearing a light down jacket and a pair of Martin boots. She looked very casual. She didn't look like she was going to work, but more like she was going to the street. She was afraid of the cold, so she put 2 sets of professional clothes in the office and changed into them when she got there. At this moment, she tightened the down jacket and directly passed by Ling Jing. However, Ling Jing stood in front of her. If Su Peijian had seen clearly last night, she would have found that Ling Jing was still wearing the clothes from yesterday. He sat in the car for the whole night and smoked for the whole night. At this moment, the smell of alcohol had dissipated, and his whole body was full of the smell of smoke. The smell made Su Peijian frown and take a step back without thinking. There was plenty of light during the day. All his expressions were exposed to the sun. What's the matter? Cold, alienated, indifferent. It was just like when they first met. No, it made him feel worse than when they first met. At least when they first met, they hadn't reached this step yet. Peijian, I'll send you to work. Ling Jing's words made Su Peijian raise her eyebrows. Looking at the anxiety in Ling Jing's eyes, she suddenly smiled. Young Master Ling wants to send me to work. Thank you, I can't afford it. Peijian, don't talk like that. I really feel bad. Bad? Su Peijian looked at the pain in his eyes, and the smile in her eyes deepened. Young Master Ling, I admit that your acting is good. Your acting is really good. It's so good that you played me around. I really thank you for wronging a young master like you. For me, you spent so much effort pretending to be poor, pretending to be a gangster, and pretending to be pitiful. You acted like it was real. Thinking about it this way, I really didn't lose out. No, you acted so deeply before, so deeply that I believed it without a doubt. But young Master Ling, this is a show. There will be a time when the curtain will fall. You've acted enough, and you've played enough. Can you be magnanimous and let me go? No, I'm really not. I'm not acting this time. I'm serious. Perhaps it was acting at the beginning, but at the same time, he also got into character and unknowingly put himself in it. Su Peijian, I'm serious. I really want to start over with you. Do you really want to start over with me? Or do you think that you haven't played enough with me, a prisoner through labor? Don't say those 3 words again. I beg you. He couldn't listen to those 3 words. Hearing them made his heart ache. What 3 words? A prisoner through labor. Su Peijian spread her hands and looked indifferent. Am I wrong? That's the truth. I'm a prisoner through labor. Young Master Ling said that. I'm just repeating your words. Su Peijian, it's all my fault. Everything, it's all my fault. Ling Jing stepped forward and held her hand. He closed his eyes. He really couldn't stand Su Peijian's attitude. I didn't do it on purpose. I was just too angry at that time. You know. That Hui Yifan, he sent me some photos. I saw it at the time, and I went crazy with anger. I thought those photos were real. Besides, you guys used to be good. I believed it. Su Peijian stood there and listened to him continue with a cold face. Her expression was indifferent, and she looked unmoved. Ling Jing really regretted it. He thought of Su Peijian saying that he had no brain yesterday. It wasn't that he didn't have a brain. It was just that at that moment, anger took over his rationality, plus the embarrassment of being discovered by her. He didn't know how to explain his identity, but he just had to receive those photos. The 2 things were mixed together, so he lost his rationality for a moment. I was wrong. I regret it. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have not given you a chance to explain. I shouldn't have jumped to a conclusion without asking anything. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. The winter sun slowly rose and shone on her body, but there was no warmth at all. Her fingertips were slightly cold. Ling Jing held her hand very tightly, as if this could give him some warmth. Are you done? There were some things that Su Peijian knew yesterday. Indeed, the person who sent the photos was Hui Yifan, and it had nothing to do with Ling Jing. Seeing those photos made Ling Jing angry. In the end, it wasn't Hui Yifan who said those hurtful words. But so what? Su Peijian took a step forward and didn't rush to withdraw her hand. She just stared at Ling Jing. You said that you were angry because you saw Hui Yifan's photo. Yes, but before that. Su Peijian's voice was very cold, and her expression was even colder. Before that, who were you? Ling Jing. Wasn't it? Before that, your identity was already the young master of the Ling family. Wasn't it? You were injured at that time, and I brought you back. Then, by accident, I thought of you as a hooligan, a gigolo, and I said I wanted to keep you. You could be angry, you could leave, or you could refuse. Right? Yes. Ling Jing couldn't defend himself. It was indeed like that. He could refuse, or he could leave. You didn't refuse. You agreed. On the surface, you signed an agreement with me and said that I would keep you for half a year. In fact, at that time, you felt uncomfortable and unwilling. Right? You had a chance to explain the situation. As long as you told me your identity, I promised that I would give up the idea. But you didn't. Not only did you not, but you also followed my wishes and acted with me. You played the role of a gigolo, a hooligan to perfection. In the end, you made me believe that you were a hooligan with nothing. You were a gigolo who relied on me to keep you, right? Right? And then, the anger in your heart didn't dissipate. Your unwillingness was still there. You just hid it. You decided to zhou xian, to hide your identity and stay by my side. At that time, you should have started planning, right? The series of questions made Ling Jing's voice stuck in his throat. There were many things he couldn't say. He could only stare at her blankly. Peijian, let me finish. In fact, at that time, you started thinking about taking revenge on me. Didn't you? Ling Jing couldn't refute that. What she said was the truth. I noticed that I might have a different feeling for you. Lin Feixing appeared. He was pursuing me. My mother wanted me to get married, so I decided to stop our relationship. At that time, I completely angered you. On the surface, you seemed to agree. But in fact, you were thinking about how to make me fall in love with you. In the end, you could declare victory in front of me and dump me. Peijian, I didn't. I only thought that way at first. Then, you appeared in front of me. Not only did you act like a hooligan and pretend to be pitiful, but you also hurt yourself on purpose. In order to convince me, he even bought that bungalow. Everything was just a ruse. And you were the one who set it up. I'm the one who fell into your trap, the one who fell into your trap. No, it's not exactly like that. I was just... She was mad. You were just unwilling. You were just angry. You just wanted me to submit to you. And you got it later. I believed in you. I chose you. You succeeded. You also won. After you won, you felt that you were tired of playing the game and wanted to end it. So, after receiving those photos, you just had an excuse, a reason. Those photos successfully made you decide to get rid of me and complete your original plan to take revenge on me, didn't they? The series of words were sharp and direct. Who was Su Peijian? She had been with Su Qinghui in the business world since she was a child. She had her own vision and vision. That's right, Ling Jing said it seriously. It sounded as if they really didn't trust each other enough. But what was the truth? Ling Jing, from the beginning to the end, whether you were sincere or not, your feelings for me were built on deception. An encounter that started with deception, a relationship that was decided to be based on revenge from the beginning. Does it have anything to do with misunderstanding? Her aura was too fierce, her words too sharp and direct, and every word she said was to the point. Ling Jing was speechless. Standing there for a long time, she couldn't think of anything to refute. Su Peijian finally pulled her hand back. Looking at some stubble on Ling Jing's chin, she took a step back. Chapter 874. What Su Peijian cared about was not just a misunderstanding, but deception. From the beginning, Ling Jing had the intention of deception and revenge. It was not a good beginning, a process full of calculations and conspiracies. Love. Love in the name of deception, full of calculations and conspiracies, how could there be sincerity? The wind was cold, and the sun couldn't shine into his heart. Ling Jing stood there. He had always been proud, arrogant, and unrestrained. But now he felt that he couldn't say a word. Seeing that Su Peijian was about to walk past him, he suddenly reached out and pulled her back. Peijian. The two of them stood next to each other, and he turned his head to look at her expression. Her side profile was beautiful, and her expression was cold. His heart felt like it was being pricked by needles, bursts of pain. It may not have been very good at the beginning, but later I really fell in love with you. Peijian, I love you. It was a simple 3 words. His eyes were focused and full of his sincerity. Su Peijian turned her face to look at Ling Jing, not missing the focus and deep love in his eyes. Last time, young Master Ling said that you weren't tired of me, a prisoner through labor. Now it seems that it's true. The self-deprecating and sarcastic tone made Ling Jing feel ashamed. His lips moved, but his words became weak. Peijian, Zhangnan Avenue, 59, do you know it? Su Peijian's words made Ling Jing confused. She smiled. Rong City Women's Prison. There are many people like me there. If young Master Ling thinks it's fun and you haven't had enough, I think you should go there and try. Peijian, Su Peijian pulled her hand back. She wanted to walk to work, but now she was not in the mood. She looked at a taxi that just stopped by the roadside. She directly got into the car and left. Ling Jing was left alone by the roadside, enjoying the cold wind alone. It blew into one's heart, making one feel cold from the inside out. Night. The private room smelled of alcohol, and the coffee table in front of the L-shaped sofa was full of all kinds of alcohol. There were also a few empty bottles mixed among them. Gu Xiu looked at Ling Jing sitting on the sofa, drinking like a pig. He didn't dare to ask the young master to drink less. His phone rang at the right time. He hurried forward and handed the phone to Ling Jing. Young master, it's a call from madam. I'm not answering. Without raising his head, Ling Jing threw away the cup in his hand, took another bottle of wine, and poured it directly into his mouth. Young master. Gu Xiu had been with Ling Jing for a long time, but this was the first time Ling Jing had ever experienced such a situation. No, there was another time half a year ago. After Su Qingsang took Su Peijian away, Ling Jing threw a big tantrum in the villa. He was done venting his anger. He asked someone to bring him wine and drank wildly for the whole night. Gu Xiu almost thought that Ling Jing would be poisoned by alcohol and had to be sent to the hospital. However, Ling Jing wasn't sent to the hospital at that time. Instead, she didn't go crazy after getting drunk. He always raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the door. His voice was unsteady but full of anger. Isn't it just a woman? Rare? Go, all of you go. I can't wait for you to leave and not be an eyesore in front of me. Get lost. All of you, scram. That time was almost the same as now. Gu Xiu watched Ling Jing get drunk, he watched him go crazy, he watched him repeat a few words over and over again. In the end, he couldn't speak or drink anymore. Gu Xiu didn't ask for help from others and personally sent him back to his room. "Woman, don't go." If he hadn't heard Ling Jing's murmur when he sent Ling Jing back to his room, he would almost have thought that Ling Jing lost his temper and drank because he was humiliated by Su Qingsang. He thought that Ling Jing would go to Su Peixian when he woke up the next day. However, he didn't expect that Ling Jing would wake up the next day as if nothing had happened, He would do what he had to do. For a time, Gu Xiu thought that the murmur he heard that day was his illusion. Ling Jing couldn't have said that. Now looking at Ling Jing's appearance, he still remembered that Ling Jing stopped Su Peixian and talked for a long time. Although he was far away and didn't hear what they said at all. But from Ling Jing's tone and expression, Gu Xiu knew that the young master's tribulation had come again. Wasn't this Su Peixian Ling Jing's tribulation? Every time Ling Jing met her, it was abnormal. It seemed that more than half a year had passed, but Su Peixian could still affect Ling Jing. Young master. Seeing that Ling Jing was about to drink again, Gu Xiu couldn't let her drink anymore. Don't drink anymore. No matter how much you drink, Miss Su won't know. She doesn't feel bad, right? When he didn't mention Su Peixian, Ling Jing's face became more and more ugly. He picked up the wine on the table and was about to continue, but Gu Xiu pressed his hand. Young master, this woman's personality is similar. No matter how hard her mouth is, her heart is soft. If you have any misunderstanding with Miss Su, just solve it. If you want her to turn back, isn't it easy? You can make her soft-hearted. Once her heart softens, maybe she will turn back. Ling Jing stopped drinking and looked up at Gu Xiu. It seemed that he just remembered that Gu Xiu had a girlfriend who was talking about marriage. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Gu Xiu as if thinking about his words. What did you say? Make her soft-hearted. Yes. Now, as long as he could stop Ling Jing from drinking, Gu Xiu was willing to try anything. He looked at Ling Jing carefully and said very cautiously, "Young master, think about it." Looking at the blood on the other party's body, her heart stopped beating for a moment. She covered her chest with her hand and stood there for a long time, unable to move. The place where Ling Jing fell happened to be in front of her car door. If she wanted to open the door, she would have to move him. Su Peixian stood there for a long time, staring at Ling Jing's corpse for a long time. She finally recovered and realized that something was wrong. She slowly bent down and turned Ling Jing's body over. There was blood on the other party's chest. She didn't check the other party's wound, but directly patted Ling Jing's shoulder. Get up. Ling Jing lay there without moving. Su Peixian looked at his tightly closed eyes, gritted her teeth, grabbed Ling Jing's arm hard, and dragged him to the side. Ling Jing seemed to be dragged awake by her. He opened his eyes with a painful look on his face. When he saw Su Peixian, his eyes lit up. If you want to pretend to be dead, go somewhere else. Su Peixian interrupted him and at the same time let go of her hand, letting his body fall to the ground. If you're injured, go to the hospital. Peixian. Why was it different from what he thought? Ling Jing was stunned. I'm injured. I said, if you're injured, go to the hospital. Su Peixian didn't move at all. Seeing that Ling Jing's body was already some distance away from her car door, she opened the door without thinking and got in the car. The moment she was about to start the car, Ling Jing panicked. He quickly stood up and tried to open the door. Peixian. Su Peixian didn't say a word and just looked at him coldly. Only then did Ling Jing realize that he had been exposed. I'm just, Su Peijian pulled his hand away. Ling Jing, you're really hopeless. After saying this, she slammed the car door. She started the car and left. Chapter 875. Christmas. In the past, it was Su Peijian's birthday. Today, it became Su Qingsang's birthday. Unlike in previous years, Su Qingsang called Su Peijian this year and invited her to have dinner together. She refused. There were many people in the Hu family, and Hui Yifan was there. She didn't want to join in the fun. Su Qingsang probably knew her concerns and repeatedly made it clear to her that it was just a very private party. It was just Hu Jiniao's childhood friends and their girlfriends. There would be no one else. Su Peijian thought about it and didn't refuse. She said goodbye to Xiang Kaiping and went to Su Qingsang's party. Last time, Su Qingsang took her away from Ling Jing's house. Although she was confident that she could get away in the end, she did owe Su Qingsang a favor. She remembered it too. Hu Jiniao's childhood friends had all found girlfriends in the past 2 or 3 years. Li Junxing brought Yizhen. Wan Xianyang had been pursuing Shi Mengwan, but now he had a new girlfriend. Su Changlong and Qing Xianyun were married. The only single person present was Tang Mohun. Because the seat next to him was empty, and Su Qingsang's seat was next to it. Su Peijian didn't think much and looked at the empty seat and sat down. She didn't realize that something was wrong until she sat down. Su Qingsang blinked at her. She suddenly felt a little awkward. Tang Mohun, on the other hand, didn't look awkward at all. He pushed a glass in front of her. Do you want to drink or drink? Drink. Tang Mohun was already over 30, and he was the only one in this group who was still single. Watching a group of childhood friends get married and have children. It was like Hu Jiniao had a pair of twins. Tang Mohun wasn't in a hurry at all. Drink this. Plum wine with a low alcohol content. It's like buying a drink. Thank you. Su Peijian picked up the glass. It was indeed a very light wine with almost no smell of alcohol. She had never attended Hu Jiniao's childhood friends' parties. She had attended many parties in Hui Yifan's circle. However, he took a serious look at the other people present. She was willing to admit that the circle was really interesting. Your company's recent project in England is doing well. The sudden voice made her turn around and realize that Tang Mohun was talking to her. Thank you. He was referring to the project led by Su Qinghui and Lin Feixing's company. I know Boss Lin too. He admires you very much. Tang Mohun was holding a glass in his hand and drinking. His posture was very elegant. Su Peijian smiled. Mr. Lin, you're exaggerating. I'm not as good as he says. Tang Mohun turned to look at Su Peijian and suddenly smiled. Not bad. You know your place. Su Peijian didn't understand what he meant. Tang Mohun smiled. Our company is preparing to start a similar project in Australia. The project is quite big. If your company is interested, we can pick a time to discuss it. Sure. Su Peijian wouldn't mind Tang Mohun's attitude if she didn't earn money. Maximizing benefits was what she wanted. As for Tang Mohun, she didn't think that he would be interested in her. If it was just a collaboration, that would be fine. Tang Mohun raised his glass and clinked it with hers. I look forward to working with you. I look forward to working with you. After clinking glasses and finishing the drink in the glass, there was nothing more to say. Su Peijian was a little bored sitting there, so she took the opportunity to go out and go to the bathroom outside. The door of the private room opposite her opened at that moment. She saw the person sitting inside from the corner of her eye. Ling Jing. He was sitting there drinking. It seemed that he had drunk a lot. After just a glance, she looked away, turned around, and continued to walk forward without looking back. Her footsteps were very fast, but the person who had been drinking inside was even faster. The door was open, and someone rushed out from inside. As he walked, many of the wine bottles on the coffee table fell to the ground. The noise was followed by a knock on the door, and before she could react, her wrist was grabbed by someone. She turned to look at Ling Jing, and he dragged her into her private room. Su Peijian wanted to scream, but she saw Gu Xiu come out. He was used to reading people's eyes and cleared away the irrelevant people. After a few seconds, the person who stayed inside came out. She was brought into the private room by Ling Jing. She looked at him coldly, but at that moment, he let go of her hand and blocked the door. For more than half a year, she had never thought of seeing Ling Jing. But in the past few days, she had met Ling Jing one after another. If it was a coincidence, she really didn't believe it. Is it interesting? She looked at Ling Jing, who was blocking the door with his body and not letting her out. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian. He reached out and directly hugged her into his arms. He lowered his head and was about to kiss her. Su Peijian's body struggled for a moment. As her hands were held behind her back by him, his lips finally touched. Their lips met, and their lips were filled with the taste of each other's alcohol. She was like this, and so was he. However, the taste of alcohol in his mouth was much stronger. Su Peijian didn't respond. She let him plunder and never let go. He kept rubbing her lips, but he couldn't go any deeper. The eagerness in his heart made him turn around with her in his arms, and his body was pressed against the door. His breathing became heavy. His hands were on the door behind her, and he looked at her fixedly. His eyes were bloodshot, and his breath was hot. Compared to Su Peijian's cold expression, there was no fluctuation in her eyes. He caressed her cheek. This woman made him love and hate her at the same time. Can we forget all the things that happened in the past? Can we reset and start over? Can't we? His voice was very conflicted. He held her tightly and refused to let go. No. Her voice was even colder than her expression. Ling Jing felt a slight pain in his heart. Tell me, what do you have to do to forgive me? Forgive? That was really a difficult question to answer. Su Peijian was also straightforward. Never contact each other. Impossible. If he hadn't realized his feelings, he could pretend that nothing had happened. But since he had already realized his feelings, how could he let her go? Because of the broken wine bottle in the private room, the smell of alcohol was very strong. Su Peijian didn't like this kind of place. If it weren't for Su Qingsang, she wouldn't have planned to come today. Su Peijian. He leaned over and kissed her lips. His voice was a little pleading. Forgive me, please. Seeing that she was unmoved, he suddenly became angry. He grabbed her waist and used force to rub her into his body. Do you still remember? You promised me something. You promised me. Su Peijian frowned slightly. It seemed that she only remembered at this moment that she seemed to have promised him something. Before she could recall, he had already said his request. I know you have a good memory. You remember, right? You said that you can promise me one thing. I'm mentioning it now. My request is that you forgive me. Seeing that she ignored him, he pressed his forehead against hers and stubbornly asked for her answer. Say that you forgive me. Su Peijian looked at the man. The man's eyes were bloodshot and his breathing was rapid. The two of them were very close, so close that she could hear the other's heartbeat. She just looked at him. When the man was about to explode, she said the words that he wanted to hear. I forgive you. The surprise came too suddenly. Ling Jing stared at her with her eyes wide open. She could hardly believe her ears. What did you say? Say it again. I forgive you. Can you let go? Pasian, youth Su Pasian put one hand on his chest. She was much calmer than Ling Jing thought. Don't you understand? I said I forgive you. You can let go. No, since you forgive me, then we've Ling Jing. Su Pasian interrupted him rudely. You only asked me to promise you one condition. You said you wanted me to forgive you, and I promised. But forgiving you and being with you are two conditions. But the wine that Ling Jing had just drunk seemed to finally start to rush to his brain. He looked at Su Pasian with a headache. It's not like this. It shouldn't be like this. You promised me. You promised yourself. Isn't that right? Let go. You promised me. Ling Jing. I've done what I promised you. It's not like this. It wasn't like this. What he wanted her to do wasn't like this. Even if she said she forgave him, he knew that she hadn't forgiven him in her heart. If you're really willing to forgive me, you should promise to give me a chance and start over with me. Ling Jing. Don't you understand? I can forgive you, but I won't be with you anymore. Why? Since she could forgive him, why couldn't she accept him again? Because your credibility with me is zero, Su Pasian said bluntly. I don't know which of your words are true and which are false. I don't know what's waiting for me after you pretend to be deeply in love with me. I don't know which day you, young Master Ling, will bring up the past on a whim. I won't, I promise, I really won't. Really? Unfortunately, I don't believe you. I really won't. I can swear, in the future. Ling Jing was eager to prove himself, but Su Pasian didn't want to hear it. She pushed him away and looked at him fixedly. Ling Jing, you're a good girl. Ling Jing, my identity, my past, my experience, they are all facts, unchangeable facts. I am a prisoner, I am a woman who has had other men. Why should I believe your oath, your promise? She interrupted his explanation and promise. For Su Pasian, it was hard to accumulate trust, but it was easy to destroy it. Ling Jing was speechless. Su Pasian took a step to the side and put her hand on the door handle. Chapter 876. Ling Jing stubbornly refused to let Su Pasian leave. If she could really forgive herself, why didn't she let it all go? He and she had had a good time. Didn't they? He hadn't forgotten. He didn't believe that she had. The two of them were so compatible, both in bed and out of bed. They actually had a tacit understanding, didn't they? They really loved each other, didn't they? Is it so important how it started? Isn't the process more important than the result? Su Pasian turned to look into his eyes. The lights in the private room weren't very bright. She could see Ling Jing's eyes clearly. For me, yes. The process and the result are important, but the beginning is also very important. Su Pasian sat in the designated driver's car. When she passed by Rong City's Jiangxin Park, she found someone setting off fireworks there. It was Christmas. There were many people celebrating outside. She asked the driver to slow down a little. Her eyes were a little blurred as she looked at the fireworks outside. When she left Ling Jing's private room and closed the door, she heard Ling Jing suddenly say 5 words. Pasian, I love you. His uncharacteristically low and hoarse voice was full of pain and entanglement. At that moment, Su Pasian's footsteps stopped there. In the end, she still left without looking back. In the past, she wouldn't care about things outside of her body, nor would she care about the eyes of others. However, this entanglement with Ling Jing made her see through many things. In fact, if it was just the misunderstanding that day, she really wouldn't take it to heart. She could understand the decisions made by people under impulse. After getting along with Ling Jing for so long, she could more or less see his personality. But she really couldn't forgive Ling Jing's original motive and the hurtful words he said. She didn't like to dig up people's old debts. But at the same time, she didn't like others to dig up her old debts. She could maintain this little bit of contact with Su Qingsang now because Su Qingsang could let it go. If she could, naturally, she could too. When many people talked about things that had nothing to do with them, they always liked to say that the past was the past. However, they didn't know that sometimes the hurt couldn't be passed. Closing her eyes, Su Peijian emptied her mind and left Ling Jing behind. She didn't think about anything. Kyoto, Japan. Su Peijian stood in front of the simple wooden door and turned to look at Xiang Kaiping. We are half a month late. The maple leaves here are almost all gone. The colored glass courtyard was a relatively small tourist attraction in Kyoto, Japan. It was open twice a year. Cherry blossoms in spring and maple leaves in autumn. Su Peijian and the others were late. It was already past the opening hours, but they could still vaguely see the red leaves all over the mountain, as well as the shadow of autumn. It was a nice day. She and Xiang Kaiping had been in Japan for 3 days. 2 days ago, he brought Xiang Kaiping to Tianlong Temple and Qingshui Temple. Xiang Kaiping had been to Japan once before, but that time, Su Qingsang had taken her to Tokyo. There was also Naros Hot Spring. This time, when Su Peijian brought her to the capital, she had never been there before. He was very excited along the way. Of course, he was excited not because he could come and play, but because he could come with his daughter. This made her happier than the last time she went to Europe with a group of ginseng. Mom, it's already past the open season. I don't know if they'll let us in. Wait a minute, I'll go and ask. It's okay for her. It's okay even if she can't. Anyway, since we're here, we'll just take it as exercise and walk around. Okay. Su Peijian went up and knocked on the door. After a serious conversation with the people inside, she pointed in the direction of Kaiping. After about 5 minutes, the people in the temple finally relented and agreed to let them in. The low-key, simple wooden door was a picturesque scene of early winter inside. Although the maple leaves were already damaged, they could still see a fiery red. Xiang Kaiping looked at the beautiful scenery in front of her and was in a good mood. It's so beautiful here. Yes, it's beautiful. Su Peijian handed a bag in her hand to Xiang Kaiping. There's a place for tourists to copy scriptures. Do you want to copy them? The most special thing about this temple was not only the beautiful scenery. Another special feature was that there would be scriptures for the guests to copy here. Tourists would write down their wishes and offer them in front of Buddha, asking Buddha to bless their wishes to come true. Okay. Xiang Kaiping was not a religious person in the past, but ever since she recognized her daughter and a series of things happened, she began to believe. Su Peijian took Xiang Kaiping up the stairs to the 2nd floor. In addition to enjoying the beautiful scenery, there were also tables for tourists to copy scriptures. Xiang Kaiping was very devout. Su Peijian was only there to accompany her. Seeing her like that, she sat down. She did not believe in Buddhism and did not understand Buddhist scriptures. Looking at the words on it, there was a strange but familiar feeling. She knew the words, but when put together, she did not know what they meant. Glancing at Xiang Kaiping, she picked up the pen and started copying. Every stroke, every word, and every sentence. Slowly, she became focused and did not even notice that there was another person in the room. After he finished copying, the last blank space was for him to write his name and wish. After writing her name, Su-Peision was stunned for a long time. Her wish. Thinking about her current state of life, she did not seem to have any wishes. Her relationship with Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue had eased, and her relationship with Xiang Kaiping was considered close. Even Su Qingsang, whom she had never liked before, was now in contact with again. She did not have to worry too much about the company, as long as she did not court disaster. She believed that before she retired, her life would only get better, not worse. Then, she really could not think of any wishes. Looking out of the window, she saw the red and green mountain scenery. Life was too short. The 4 seasons changed, and a lifetime passed in a few spring and autumn. Closing her eyes, she wrote down 8 words. No desire, no love, strong. When she finished writing, she found that Xiang Kaiping was still copying. She quietly got up, wanting to stretch her muscles and bones. Her gaze fell on the figure sitting on the other side. For a moment, she thought there was something wrong with her eyes. Ling Jing. Why was he here? Ling Jing sat diagonally across from her. He lowered his head and was very focused on copying scriptures. Su-Peision inexplicably felt a little uncomfortable. She wanted to say something, but it seemed that she could not say anything. The room was very quiet. Ling Jing seemed to be very serious and did not notice that she had finished copying. At this time, there were no other tourists. Su-Peision got up, turned around, and walked to the window to look at the scenery outside. The mountain wind was very strong, and the capital was a little cold at this season. She crossed her arms, feeling complicated and indescribable. Xiang Kaiping quickly finished copying. She got up and walked in front of her, asking her where to put the copied scriptures. Su-Peision took the scripture from her hand. Just put it in the temple hall downstairs and worship it in front of the Buddha. Xiang Kaiping wanted to say something, but realized that there were other people present, so she whispered, "Then let's go down." Su-Peision nodded, forcing herself not to look in Ling Jing's direction. Unexpectedly, Ling Jing had also finished copying at this time. He got up, walked in front of them, smiled at them, and nodded again. Xiang Kaiping had always been a warm person, so she also returned a smile. Seeing Xiang Kaiping smile, Ling Jing immediately wanted to say something, but when he saw Su-Peision's gloomy face, he could only shut up. He went straight in the direction of the downstairs. Out of the room, downstairs, and through the lobby was the temple hall of the colored glass courtyard. At this time, there were monks chanting scriptures inside. Although they were using a language that Xiang Kaiping did not understand, it did not reduce the devotion in her heart. "I'm going to worship the Buddha. Help me put this on the table." "Okay." Su-Peision nodded. She took the 2 copied scriptures to the table and saw Xiang Kaiping's wish at a glance. "I hope that my daughter Su-Peision can find happiness." This simple sentence made Su-Peision's heart tremble. She knew very well that Xiang Kaiping had always been a very traditional, very simple woman. But she was still moved by this prayer. Compared to her, she seemed to be much colder. When she put the scriptures on the table, she saw the handwritten Buddhist scripture on the top. She glanced at it and saw her name on it. "I hope that Su-Peision can forgive me and be with me." Childish. Ridiculous. Boring. Did he think that she would be moved by him doing something like this? Would she forgive him and agree to be with him? Su-Peision expressionlessly placed the scriptures she had copied on the table and took a step back. When she saw Xiang Kaiping, who was sincerely worshipping Buddha, she put her palms together and closed her eyes with sincerity. She had no wish in her heart. She only hoped that Xiang Kaiping would be healthy and that the people she cared about would be safe and happy. Feeling a slight movement beside her, she looked to her side. Ling Jing had not left yet. He also stood beside her devoutly, with his hands together and his eyes closed. Su Peijian looked at him and thought about the wish he had just written. His hands, which were hanging by his side, clenched tightly. Soon, he pretended that nothing had happened and looked elsewhere. Xiang Kaiping happened to be done. She walked to Xiang Kaiping and gestured for her to leave with her. The exit was on the other side. Along the corridor of the Japanese-style building, they passed through another room and left the main building. When they came out, the cold wind blew on Xiang Caiping's face. The temperature here is fine. It's not colder than Rong City. Yes. She had seen the weather forecast before. It seemed that it would snow in Rong City in the next few days. I don't know if it will snow here. If it does, it should be beautiful. If you like it, I can come with you when it snows here. That's not necessary. Xiang Kaiping patted her hand and smiled gently. You are already busy with work. You don't have to accompany an old woman like me every day. If I want to come next time, I can come with the tour group. Su Peijian did not respond. Xiang Caiping's expectations of her were too low. As they spoke, they had already walked up the stairs. He heard light footsteps coming from behind him. Chapter 877. Ling Jing didn't look at Su Peijian. Instead, she looked at Xiang Kaiping and spoke in a surprised voice. Hey, are you from China, too? Xiang Kaiping turned around in surprise. Hello, are you from China, too? Su Peijian stood by the side and watched coldly as Ling Jing pretended not to know her. She gave him a warning look. Ling Jing didn't seem to notice her eyes. He stood in front of Xiang Kaiping with a smile and politeness on his face. Yes, I'm from China, too. Which part of China are you from? When he said this, he deliberately revealed a bit of accent. Sure enough, Xiang Caiping's eyes lit up. I'm from Rong City. What a coincidence. I'm from Rong City, too. Ling Jing smiled brightly and looked at Su Peijian. When she saw the coldness in her eyes, she quickly looked back at Xiang Caiping's face. Are you here to play, too? Can you take a photo for me? She took out her phone and handed it to Xiang Kaiping. I'm old and can't do much. Let my daughter take a photo for you. She glanced at Su Peijian and gestured for Su Peijian to help. Su Peijian stood there and didn't move. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian and didn't get annoyed when she didn't move. Sister, you look so young. Your daughter is already so old. I can't tell. If you didn't tell me, I would have thought she was your sister. Ha ha ha. As long as it was a woman, there was no one who didn't like to be praised as young. Xiang Kaiping smiled more happily because of Ling Jing's words. You're really good at talking. She turned to look at Su Peijian. Peijian, take a photo for this gentleman. Su Peijian pursed her lips into a straight line. She looked at the phone that Ling Jing handed over and took it with no expression. Wait a minute. Ling Jing took a few steps back and stood on the steps in the courtyard, looking at Su Peijian intently. In Xiang Caiping's eyes, it was just an ordinary tourist taking photos. Su Peijian saw the different meaning in her eyes. She didn't want to take a photo of Ling Jing at all, even if she was willing to admit that Ling Jing was very handsome under the camera. He almost didn't need to pose, and he already looked very stylish. Are you done? Ling Jing still wanted to ask such a question. Su Peijian pursed her lips into a straight line again and pressed the shutter button. She did it on purpose. She didn't take a picture or look for an angle. His hand trembled, and a piece of paper was smashed. When he pressed down again, he only slapped a body, not even a head. Ling Jing didn't even look at the 3 photos that Su Peijian had taken. But she just returned the phone to Ling Jing. Without saying a word, he planned to leave after filming. Before he left, he did not forget to glare at Ling Jing, his eyes full of warning. Ling Jing didn't seem to be affected by her gaze at all. "Thank you." He took the phone and pretended to look at the photos inside. When he saw his headless self, he did not feel the slightest bit angry. Su Peijian looked at him and smiled even more brightly than before. Then, she walked up to Xiang Kaiping. "Big sister, why don't you do it?" As he spoke, he did not forget to show Xiang Kaiping the photo he had just taken. Xiang Kaiping looked at it and gasped. "Peijian." The photos Su Peijian had taken of her were all pretty. Su Peijian almost wanted to clench his teeth. If Xiang Kaiping wasn't here, she had no doubt that she would directly strangle Ling Jing. "Sorry, my hand shook." "It's okay. It's cold here." Seeing that Ling Jing was still making excuses for Su Peijian, Xiang Kaiping felt very embarrassed. "Sir. I'm sorry. Big sister, it's okay." He said it was okay, but Xiang Kaiping felt embarrassed. She glanced at Su Peijian, her tone not blaming, but a bit more reminding. "Peijian, take a good photo for him." Su Peijian inhaled again and again, restraining herself again and again. She resisted the urge to explode and took more than a dozen photos of Ling Jing in one breath. Finally, she handed it to him expressionlessly. "Thank you." Ling Jing thanked her with a smile. Looking at Xiang Kaiping and Su Peijian, he spoke very warmly. "Let me take a group photo for you too." Su Peijian wanted to refuse, but Xiang Kaiping nodded without hesitation. "Okay." She took out her phone and handed it to Ling Jing. "Sir, you are so kind." "Thank you." "You're welcome." Ling Jing took Xiang Kaiping's phone and gestured for Su Peijian to stand with Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian didn't want to cooperate at all, but she couldn't resist Xiang Kaiping's enthusiasm. The mother and daughter stood in the winding path. The maple leaves on the mountain were almost all gone. But Su Peijian was beautiful. Ling Jing held the phone and took a photo of them very seriously. After taking the photo, she handed the phone to Xiang Kaiping. "Big sister, look at it. What do you think?" "Okay." Su Peijian had given Xiang Kaiping a new phone before she left Europe. The photo function was very good. She took the phone and flipped through it. Immediately, a very happy smile appeared on her face. "Peijian, look. This gentleman is really good at taking photos. He took such a beautiful photo of you." "It's not me who took beautiful photos." Ling Jing was very good at talking. "It's your daughter who is beautiful." Xiang Kaiping was happier to hear someone praise her daughter than herself. "Thank you, sir. You are also very handsome." "No way. I am not handsome. I don't even have a girlfriend until now." "Really? You are so handsome, how can you not have a girlfriend?" "I think you have too high standards." "Yes. My standards are very high. I don't like ordinary women, but the women I like." Ling Jing deliberately paused and then looked at Su Peijian. Su Peijian's eyes were already burning. If Ling Jing dared to say anything, she believed that she would kick him without hesitation. "The woman I like doesn't like me." Ling Jing sighed. "But it's okay. I will work hard to make her like me." "Sir, you are so infatuated." "It's okay. You have the heart. I believe that the person you like will definitely like you too." "Really?" "Of course." Xiang Kaiping nodded. Because of the photos Ling Jing took just now, she had a very good impression of Ling Jing. Thank you for your kind words, big sister. Big sister, it is fate that we met. Since we can meet in a foreign country, why don't I be the host and treat you to a meal? No need. Supasian didn't want to bear it anymore and directly interrupted. We have already made a reservation. Not understanding why her daughter's attitude was like this, Xiang Kaiping glanced at her. She was clearly asking her what to eat tonight. Why did she say that she had made a reservation now? I see. Ling Jing seemed to be lost. Then I will have to deal with it by myself. Big sister, you don't know how to eat when you eat out alone. Why are you traveling alone? Xiang Kaiping asked casually. I said, the person I like doesn't like me, so I came to the temple here. I pray for the blessings of the gods and Buddhas. I hope that my sincerity will work, and that the person I like will also like me. Sir, you are really sincere. You will definitely get what you want. Thank you, big sister. You are such a good person. Xiang Kaiping was praised again. She couldn't help but turn to look at Supasian. Pasian, look, this gentleman is also alone. We are all China people. Why don't you see if the table you booked can seat 3 people? If possible, let this gentleman come with us. Although she said that, Supasian knew that if she didn't bring Ling Jing today, she was afraid that Xiang Kaiping could talk with Ling Jing here for half an hour. Big sister, you are welcome. If it is too troublesome, I can handle it by myself. It is not troublesome, not troublesome. She glanced at Supasian. Pasian. Supasian only felt that the back of her teeth began to hurt, and she glared at Ling Jing with hatred. However, it didn't have any effect. Instead, Ling Jing moved closer to Xiang Kaiping. Words of gratitude came out of her mouth, but her eyes were looking at Supasian. If she was not mistaken, there was a trace of pride in the other party's eyes. This realization made Supasian's face turn red. Damn Ling Jing, did he really think that she couldn't do anything to him like this? Or did he really think that she had to compromise because of him? Dream on. She would never compromise, and she would never forgive. An hour later, she looked at Ling Jing who was sitting opposite her. He and Xiang Kaiping seemed to be having a good time talking. If people who didn't know the situation saw that scene, they might think that Ling Jing was Xiang Kaiping's son. Big sister, I didn't expect you to be in Rome City's Northern Heaven District. So is my home. What a coincidence. Xiang Kaiping was really surprised. Which road is your home in Northern Heaven District? Ling Jing said a place name, and Xiang Kaiping's eyes lit up. She couldn't help but turn her face to look at Supasian. Pasian, look, what a coincidence. Not only can we meet people from the same hometown, but we are also so close. Hee hee. Coincidence? Wasn't it a coincidence? She didn't know how much effort Ling Jing had put in for such a coincidence. He asked someone to follow her. She came to Japan, and he came to Japan. She came to Glazed Light Academy, and he came to Glazed Light Academy. She said she wanted to come to eat, and he followed. He was really free. Her too cold attitude made Xiang Kaiping a little embarrassed. Pasian. It's okay. Xiang Kaiping was too simple. She believed whatever others said. The corners of Supasian's mouth twitched. You guys talk. I'm going to the bathroom. Supasian got up and left. Before she left, she glanced at Ling Jing coldly. That gaze was angry and a little warning. In the bathroom outside, Supasian tried very hard to calm herself down, but found it very difficult. Ling Jing's appearance greatly broke her expectations. She didn't expect him to be so thick-skinned, and she didn't expect him to appear in front of Xiang Kaiping so openly. She thought that after what happened before, the most important thing Ling Jing should do now was to disappear in front of her. Unexpectedly, not only did Ling Jing not disappear, but he also. Su Peijian gritted her teeth. She had never been so angry. Ling Jing had calculated that she was worried about Xiang Kaiping, so he was so unscrupulous. Chapter 878. She turned on the faucet and washed her face with cold water. Su Peijian didn't even care about ruining the makeup on her face. She needed to think of a way to drive Ling Jing far away from her sight. Su Peijian hadn't thought of a way yet. When she returned to the room, she found that Ling Jing had said something to Xiang Kaiping, who was laughing her head off. She had known Xiang Kaiping for a few years, and it had been almost 2 years since she was released from prison. It was the first time she had seen Xiang Kaiping laugh so happily. Jing, I'll go and take a look next time I go back to Rong City. Okay. Ling Jing smiled brightly, but she looked at Su Peijian from the corner of her eyes. Su Peijian gritted her teeth and felt a little pain in her gums. Peijian, you're back. Come here. Su Peijian walked to the table and sat down. The shop was traditional Japanese style. The middle of the tatami was sunken. There was a table in the middle. As soon as she sat down, she heard Xiang Caiping's very happy voice. I just realized that our house is only separated by a road from Ling Jing's house. Really? It wasn't like Su Peijian hadn't been to Ling Jing's villa before. His house was in 2 different directions from their previous villa. Yes. Don't you think it's a coincidence? Indeed. Su Peijian was expressionless, but she looked at Ling Jing with an ambiguous gaze. It's really a coincidence. That's what I said. Xiang Kaiping looked like she had met an old friend in a foreign land. She looked at Su Peijian as if she wanted her approval very much. Auntie, when we go back, let's get together again. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing coldly. She had just called her big sister. Why did she call her auntie now? She didn't know how Ling Jing fooled Xiang Kaiping, but Xiang Kaiping didn't feel anything wrong at all. Okay. Jing, you're really good. Few young people are so patient nowadays. Not at all. Isn't this what I should do? What should I do? Su Peijian sat there and watched the 2 of them talking happily. Her face became more and more gloomy. If Ling Jing really thought that she would compromise because of this, it could only mean that he didn't understand her. She would not compromise. Ling Jing would not get what he wanted. For the rest of the time, Ling Jing was very attentive. His attentiveness was just right. Xiang Kaiping would not think that he was overly flattering, nor would she think that he was impolite. In the afternoon, they would go sightseeing at the scenic spots. Ling Jing walked right up to Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, are you thirsty? Have a drink. It's not sweet. It's delicious. Auntie, the scenery here is pretty good. Let me take a photo for you. Auntie, look, you should go with your daughter. Even if Su Peijian didn't want to, Xiang Kaiping signaled her to stand with her and take pictures with her. She didn't smile much, but it didn't affect Ling Jing's performance. In the evening, the 3 of them naturally ate together again. Before Su Peijian could pay the bill, Ling Jing had already run to pay the bill. How can I accept this? It's okay, Auntie. I was going to eat alone anyway. Now that you guys are here, I can eat a little better. I should be the one thanking you. I'm really sorry. When we get back to Rong City, I'll treat you to dinner. Xiang Caiping's words made Ling Jing's eyes light up. Really? Then I won't stand on ceremony. Auntie, why don't I treat you here and you can treat me when we get back home? That's fine. Xiang Kaiping thought about it and said enthusiastically, my cooking skills are average, but I can make some snacks. When we get back to Rome City, you can come to my house for dinner. Okay. Thank you, Auntie. You're so nice. I believe that you're modest. Your cooking skills must be very good. Ling Jing flattered her without hesitation. Just look at me, and I know that you're someone who knows how to live. You're really good with words. Sure enough, Xiang Kaiping was overjoyed by Ling Jing's flattery. When Su Peijian and Ling Jing planned to return to the hotel, Xiang Kaiping was surprised to find that Ling Jing was in the same hotel as them. Ah! This is really fate. She turned to look at Su Peijian, but she didn't realize that such a coincidence was not fate at all, but man-made. Peijian, look, Jing is in the same hotel as us. Ha! Yes, what a coincidence. Su Peijian said the word coincidence through gritted teeth. Yes, what a coincidence. Ling Jing looked calm. I saw the introduction saying that this hotel is good. I didn't expect it. It's really good. It's very good. The environment here is very good and clean. The transportation is convenient, and it's close to where we're going. Xiang Kaiping had been listening to Japanese for the past few days and couldn't understand a word. She was overjoyed to meet someone who could speak Chinese. Su Peijian stood by the wall of the elevator and didn't want to say anything. Anyway, when she returned to her room, she planned to book a ticket back to China tomorrow morning. Or go somewhere else. As soon as she had this idea, Ling Jing looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, Auntie, did you go to Qingshui Temple yesterday? Did you go to Tianlong Temple? All of them. I can't remember the name. Peijian took me there. Then where are you going tomorrow, Auntie? Tomorrow? I don't know. Xiang Kaiping turned to look at Su Peijian. Peijian, where are we going tomorrow? Tomorrow. Meeting Xiang Kaiping's sparkling eyes, she couldn't say those words. She twitched the corner of her mouth and said, let's talk about tomorrow. Didn't you say we're going tomorrow, Nara? Su Peijian pursed her lips into a straight line. I said we're going to the hot spring in Nara tomorrow. Yes, we're going to the hot spring in Nara tomorrow. Xiang Kaiping repeated. There was a hint of joy in Ling Jing's eyes. Nara. Nara is good. I read the guide before and it said that the scenery there is also very good. I don't have a fixed destination. Why don't we go together? Okay. Xiang Kaiping didn't object at all. That's good. We'll go together at the appointed time tomorrow. In that case, I won't stand on ceremony and accompany you. Ling Jing glanced at Su Peijian as she spoke. She stood there expressionlessly as if she didn't see her gaze. Back in the room, Ling Jing's room was right across from them. Xiang Kaiping said again that it was fate. Su Peijian opened the door and motioned for Xiang Kaiping to go in first. Mom, you go in and rest first. I have something to discuss with Mr. Ling. Meeting Xiang Kaiping's confused gaze, she twitched the corners of her mouth and forced herself to show a smile. Aren't we going to play together tomorrow? Naturally, we have to discuss the route and so on. Don't you think so? Yes, we have to discuss it. Go ahead. I'll take a shower first. Okay. Su Peijian watched Xiang Kaiping enter the door. Then she turned to look at Ling Jing. He was also looking at her. He opened the door directly, took a step back, and gestured for her to enter. Su Peijian looked at him coldly and closed her eyes. She didn't want to fight in the corridor like this, so she chose to enter Ling Jing's room. As soon as she entered, Ling Jing closed the door. Her body was pressed against the door by him. She didn't move. His eyes were eager. He stared at her for a long time and finally lowered his head to kiss her. Su-Peijian didn't even struggle. She just stared at him. Ling Jing's lips stopped less than a centimeter away from Su-Peijian's lips. His breath was hot as he stared fixedly at her face. He didn't speak, and Su-Peijian didn't speak either. Their eyes met, but the air was quiet. Ling Jing was unwilling to give up. He wanted to let go, but he couldn't. If he didn't let go, Su-Peijian's attitude was obviously stubborn. He made up his mind, tilted his head, and kissed her lips. He was almost hissing. He was forceful, fierce, rough, and eager. Su-Peijian's lips hurt, but she didn't even move. She just stared at him. Ling Jing was more and more unwilling. He just bit her lips lightly and didn't let go. Their lips met, and they were glued together. Su-Peijian didn't even bother to push him. He was annoyed and used more force. Just a kiss wasn't enough for him. He raised his hand and clasped it around her waist. It was very cold in the capital. She was wearing a slightly thick woolen coat. Ling Jing's hand reached into the coat, then followed the hem of her clothes, and was about to go higher. At this moment, Su-Peijian put her hand behind her back and grabbed his hand. He stopped for a moment, and his forehead was still against hers. He just stared at her. Su-Peijian let his breath brush across her face, and her eyebrows didn't move. Is it interesting? Ling Jing's hand began to exert force. This woman, now he really wanted to rub her into his body. At least this way, they could always be together. Is it interesting? Ling Jing. Yes. Ling Jing's evil nature rose. He raised his eyebrows and stroked her cheek with one hand. It's interesting. How can it be boring? I came out to play with the woman I like and my future mother-in-law. Just thinking about it makes me happy. Who are you calling mother-in-law? What do you think? Ling Jing caressed her face. Her skin was so good that he had the urge to bite it. Ling Jing, it's meaningless for you to do this. It's meaningless. Can't you just make it meaningful? Impossible. Su-Peijian was expressionless. Ling Jing, it's impossible for me to be with you. Why is it impossible? Ling Jing was very unconvinced. Didn't you say it? Have you forgiven me? Forgiving you doesn't mean I want to be with you. Su-Peijian waved his hand away. These are two different things. But in my opinion, these are the same thing. Ling Jing, there's no point in you tormenting these things. I said I won't be with you, so I won't be with you. Even if you try to please my mother, it's useless. Ling Jing tilted his head and stared at Su-Peijian. Why do you have to use the word please? In my opinion, this is not pleasing, but I think your mother is a good person. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.